All right, we are live. So welcome everyone to another Matt Maran Motoring live stream here on the Matt Maran Motoring YouTube channel. Hope you're all having a good weekend here, and thank you so much for stopping by. So like all the other usual live streams, we're going to go for about 2 hours or so. I'll give priority answering to anyone who does a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone who's a member there. The green usernames, they always get that priority answering. If you'd like that as well, there's a link in the description for that. And I see we already have a Theodore, Kevin, Abuk and Tony and Wheatman and Chad and Corvette, Raphael, Lantern Tales, Pexton, and I'm not paying 42 grand for a Prelude, and Will. And thanks for stopping by, everyone. And Mr. 705 as well. And Theodore says, Escalade is loud. You are not kidding. Glorious, but loud. How did the designers get this to pass? So if you're talking about the Escalade V, I'm guessing, it is insanely loud. So much so that on the media launch for that car, other residents or people staying at the hotel that we were at, whenever they had them all lined up and they did their morning start up in all of those at the same time, there were complaints. It was that loud. It's pretty incredible. I have no idea, what was all involved in getting them to approve of that being that loud. But I do recall vaguely, I think the discussion was, it's a V and it's just something that they felt they needed to do. They wanted to make sure that it was loud. I think they actually, don't quote me on this, but I think I recall them saying that it was actually going to be quieter. And then they're like, no, like we got to make this like actually like loud. And then they did. So there is a stealth mode for it, but unfortunately there's no stealth startup, which I think actually could really use, honestly, so that your neighbors don't all hate you. And so yeah, it's a fun car, especially if you need to just have one vehicle that does everything and you got 150 plus grand to spare. Yeah, it's pretty awesome for sure. And Kevin, thanks for stopping by. And Avik says, when is the next generation Toyota Grand Highlander coming out, or Toyota Highlander coming out? For regular Highlander, I mean, it's certainly due. But yeah, I'm not sure exactly when they're thinking. I mean, yeah, I can't say too much about that because I don't know specifics, but I can just say that I know a little bit that I'm not allowed to talk about. But it's so, but I even with the stuff that I know, I couldn't tell you any specifics anyway. But I think it's something that obviously, again, the timing is lining up for it to be due fairly soon. So, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see, where they take it. Because with Grand Highlander, the regular Highlander is, not, going to be, it doesn't have a great place, in the lineup. It's just like all the other Toyota SUVs where they're so crammed in, and there's, just such tight pricing differences between all of them and everything else. So, it'll be interesting to see again how they take Highlander for a new generation. If they do a new generation, how they end up playing all that. So yeah, but yeah, I think, it's safe to say that you can probably, look forward to something here, sometime in the not too distant future. But what that ends up being, you'll have to wait and see. But Tony says, hey Matt, I hope you all had a great weekend. Cool spot was an early 90s Acura Legend and Matt Green M5 comp. Seriously loud. I want one. Nice. That's awesome. And the Legend's really cool too. I had a buddy way back in the day who had a Legend, and he had a giant subwoofer in the back, and it was a really cool car though. I always thought those Legends were awesome, but I haven't seen them on the road in years, so that's awesome you got to see one. My fun spot, honestly, there was one weird or kind of out of the ordinary thing I saw. What was it? I knew I was going to forget it because it's one of those things where it's not common, but it's right there. I don't know, but yeah, there is something. I just can't. I'm racking my brain here. But in the meantime, the other thing I was going to say was I kind of generated my own spots this week because currently my press cars are a Charger six pack and an Audi RS6 Avant. And today we had some snow and we had somewhere to go in the RS6 Avant, which has snow tires on it. And that was kind of like a borderline bucket list thing to drive an RS6 Avant in an actual, snow squall, snowy kind of environment like that. It's really sweet. I mean, if I, were ever to win the lottery someday or something, an RS6 Avant would probably be like the regular family daily for me that I would want to drive. Now, Beth would want to have something else for whenever she was just driving. But for me, like that's kind of the dream because I love that it's still fairly low profile. If you don't know cars, you might just be like, oh, their WAG or their SUV is a little low or something, but like it's kind of one of those only the people in the know kind of appreciate it and know what it is. I mean, it's still flared out. It's got giant wheels and stuff. So, I mean, the average person probably knows it's a little bit special, but, no one would guess that thing's $158,000, and that's kind of what I love about those. I like flying under the radar and just the idea of a fast wagon that sounds great, that performs great is awesome. I've already done reviews on the RS6 Avant, but this is the performance version. And, I'll always find something new to say about an R6 Avant if they want to send one. So very happy. But I mean, I've never had one in the wintertime. And so this week, it's kind of like I'm pretending like I'm a lottery winner that bought my dream winter beater. So this has been a very fun week in that regard. Obviously, in other aspects of life, not a great week for the country and stuff. But, as far as that little slice of fun that I had, it was that was my fun little spot, I guess, this week. And let me see here. So Wheatman says, good evening, Matt and fellow car enthusiasts. Hope all is doing well in the crazy world. I know. I hope all of you are also doing okay after this week. Yeah, I won't get into it because we're here to talk cars, obviously. But yeah, not a great start to 2026, that's for sure. But Chad, thanks for stopping by. And Corvette says, well, my dad test drove a Cadillac Optic. His next plan is to drive a Toyota BZ as well as maybe the RZ. Yeah, those are both great. I mean, the BZ especially, I don't know if the new or the refreshed RZ is in dealers yet, but the BZ is a really nice step up with this, refresh version. So much quicker, so much, better range, some really nice improvements to it. And BZ, it's actually surprising. It kind of missed the end of the tax credit sales rush. So it actually didn't really sell. No, there weren't any deals on them because there were hardly any cars on the ground in Q3 of 2025 here. So BZ actually sold pretty well for the fourth quarter despite no incentives. And that kind of to me was a little bit encouraging that although the EV market is definitely going to have a terrible year this year, I'm calling it right now. It's not going to be any surprise. No one's going to be like, I told you so, whenever it happens. It's fully expected, but I think there's going to be some bright spots here this year. I think Trail Seeker, when that launches with Subaru, that's priced really well. It doesn't need incentives. It's going to be, I think a pretty big hit in my opinion. I could be wrong. We'll see. But I'm actually pleasantly surprised to see how well BZ is selling so far here for this refresh. And it just goes to show that, it's also about compelling product. And if you price it right, they also have, adjusted pricing downward to make them more competitive. It's another one of those where, same thing as the Trail Seeker, really. You look at BZ, look at how much it costs. It's going to be cheaper than a lot of RAV4s, honestly. And then you factor in, all the traditional EV things before it was all about incentives, the traditional gas savings, oil change savings, all those kinds of things. It's kind of exciting to see that BZ is finally getting recognized, for the good idea that it was, which was to make an electric RAV4 essentially. It's, sounds like a good idea and a good plan, but it just flopped so hard initially because, the tech just wasn't quite there yet as far as compelling power and range and all that. And now it has that. So I think, BZ is a really solid option these days. And And let me see. Lantern says spot of the week was a Waymo testing out in the wild here in Bellevue, Washington. Nice. That's cool to see. And let me see here. Also happy to see Jordan Shaw and Jordan Eager. Thank you so much, both of you, for stopping by, and Mike too. And Mr. 705 says, were you able to check out that YouTube channel Delivered, where he does the negotiations for car buying? It's a good watch and really shows how bad salespeople are. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet, but I think if it's the same person who does stuff on TikTok, my neighbor was actually telling me, my neighbor wanted a ride in the RS6 and the Charger this week. So it was giving him little rides in those. And he was talking about, he's been on a binge watch with someone, I think maybe the same person, or no, I think the person you were talking about is more, I don't know what the word is, just more of a stand-up person, because apparently there's a TikTok where it like just highlights like terrible salesmen and the horrible deals that people agree to, insane interest rates and stuff like that. So it's probably a different thing, but yeah, I didn't have a chance. I watch like almost no YouTube. My watch later playlist is like 800 plus videos at this point. There's all kinds of stuff that I'm like, maybe someday I'll have enough time to watch this stuff, because I want to watch it. I don't have the time. And so that's going to be added to that pile until I can get around to it. But it's a fun idea. We talked about previously about, maybe doing something like that where help people, actually with the whole car buying process and that kind of stuff. But I think that, it seems like those rants are really, hopefully, I mean, again, who knows, but it seems like they are very promising. And especially that Z one really popped off, because I was like the first non-vertical video on YouTube of the Z. And that was, really good to see. That's over like 45,000 views, which, as if you know the view counts for this channel, that is very, very good. I really want to keep leaning into those and see, where that takes me. And I mean, that's really the dream, so if I can just, rant about stuff, from my computer here, and don't have to go out and do stuff and, spend time filming all these long, fancy things and set things up and scheduling. I mean, there's a lot that goes into going out and filming something. And if I can just say, hey, look at this news thing that just popped up. Let's, pop the camera here and, rant for 10 minutes, throw a few pictures, do, minimal editing. And I can turn those rants take me an hour from start to finish, from hitting record to hitting upload. And that's, when I'm thinking about, my quality of life, me not having any time to watch videos, not having time to, even, hang out with Beth half the time, I'm working till midnight every night. If I can kind of transition to those, I'm always going to do car reviews, but if I can do more of those rants, I'm not going to be looking for other video ideas, at least as long as the rants hold up and continue to get views, because I desperately need to take my foot off the gas. And so, but I'm still collecting all these ideas. Trust me, I got a long note on my phone of all the various other ideas and creative things I've thought of in the past to try out. And, that's what I've been doing, is little by little trying out, okay, let's try the POV videos, that I did last summer and fall. Those didn't really seem to do too much. I may post new ones for the Charger and the RS6 Avant, because they're kind of special, and maybe people would like to see me drive slowly in those. But, for the most part, the POV stuff, that idea is kind of dead. And other things that, I kind of tried out a little bit here in the past year, didn't work out. But it seems like the rants are one of the few things that is actually, promising. So, but, the car buying kind of stuff is certainly a fun idea too down the road. But if nothing else, sounds like a fun thing to watch for sure. And yeah, you'll have to remind me of the name again, because I think you said it was called Delivered, right? I'll have to make sure I bookmark that if I didn't already. But yeah, I'm glad you're enjoying it, Mr. 705. And Benji says, Matt, what are your thoughts on the 2025 Mazda 3? I really like the Mazda 3. The only shortcoming is that it has a small back seat. If you don't need a roomy back seat, Mazda 3 is still probably my favorite in the segment as far as the most car for the money. Again, aside from that back seat space, but otherwise it's the most luxurious, it's the quietest, it's the most powerful as far as standard power goes, and it's priced very well. It's also one of the safest ones still, even though it's at this point 7 years old for this generation. You wouldn't know it. I think it looks fantastic still. If I, wanted something in that segment, I didn't need, a ton of backseat space. Absolutely, Mazda 3 is the way to go. Now, the reality is, if you do have kids like I do, you have car seats and stuff like that, it is pretty tight. And I just did actually a review on the Mazda 3 hatch. It was probably about a year ago at this point. I think it was a 24, but 25 is all the same. So definitely check out that video. Maybe it is a 25 I did. I don't know. But if you search Mazda 3 on the channel, you'll see my full review with all my thoughts on the Mazda 3 and how it compares to its competitors and all that stuff too. And Chad says, I saw what I assume is an 08-ish Jaguar wagon on my way home from work. I was so confused until I passed it. I didn't even know they made them for the U.S. market. Yes, they did XF wagon. They actually even did X-type wagon. I covered one of those in the junkyard walks. That was one of the first junkyard walks I did. I think it was in the first Pittsburgh one actually, where I found an X-type wagon. But yes, Jag's been bringing wagons over probably since, I don't know if they did any in the 90s, but at least early 2000s and on. Yeah, and then, we had the XF wagon here. And I think, 08 had that as well for that first generation XF, and then the second gen had it. Not a ton of them over here, probably very rare, but they did attempt at various points there to bring over Jag wagons, and fortunately just wasn't a sales success. And that's a cool spot though, so congrats on that one, Chad. And Jordan says, Chad and I made a visit to the Auto Museum in Tallahassee. They have over 160 automobiles, including 3 Plymouth Prowlers on sale. Pristine condition, each 57 grand. Wow, that is an impressive asking price, but maybe it's worth it to someone. And also, apologies, everyone. I missed the couple of super chats here. So, Nico, thank you so much for the first super chat of the night. He says, is it true that once you go BMW, you don't go back? Or is it black models only? Planning to trade the Mustang for an M2 in the summer of 27. So I'm excited for you to try that out. I think there are certainly a lot of diehard BMW fans, but I also have heard plenty of people who, tried one out, either didn't love it or they liked it, but, they wanted to try something new. I actually just had a car consultation this week. Someone, I still do that on my website, for people who want one-on-one car advice. Someone who actually had previously owned an M3 and had owned an M340i, but they, just wanted to try different platforms and different brands. And, we were actually discussing, some of the other alternatives out there. So there certainly are other people that do, not stay with the brand. And I think especially a lot of BMW drivers, have just been turned off by the styling. They've been turned off by, the way the interiors have went, people who enjoyed real switches and knobs and like the new X3, which I still haven't reviewed, but like, there's like nothing in there. And it's really, and the stuff that is in there reportedly from what I've seen is pretty cheap plastic. So you got giant screens, some cheap plastic, and like nothing else. And I don't know how that's a luxurious experience. Like to me, the only thing that, I guess you could say, from a driving experience, obviously you want something that's quiet and smooth. So that's something that sometimes luxury, providers do better than mainstream stuff. But, with all the feature content being the same anymore, with a loaded, mainstream model having all the same, cooled seats, heated steering wheel, that kind of stuff. If you don't have nice materials in a luxury vehicle, like what's the point? It's the same thing with the new Mercedes, it's just a wall of screens. It's like, what's luxurious about that? How does that separate you from the Jeep that has a wall of screens or whatever else, you're shopping? And so it just, I think Mercedes, it sounds like from the report I read a little while back, Mercedes is realizing like, hey, like people buy Mercedes because they want to be like bathed in leather and metal and wood. And when you pull all that stuff and just put a giant piece of piano black plastic or screens, that's not going to give people the, rich feeling that they're looking for. So I think that, I'm hoping that we're pretty much past or right at peak screen. And I think we're going to start to see a regression back to, classic materials, and really, craftsmanship. because I think especially luxury buyers are not going to stand for the cost cutting, which is what it is with the screens. The screens were marketed to be this, futuristic thing, and there's certainly some advantages to, all the functionality you can get with the screen, but like there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like that, that little, what are they, 15-inch screen. Even I mean, look how much it costs for a 32-inch screen, TV at Best Buy or something. They're nothing. I mean, I think even earlier this year, our TV went and we picked up another one, and it was, like at Sam's Club was like, I don't know, $200 for like a 40-inch screen or something. Like they're dirt cheap. It's way more expensive to make metal knobs and switches and buttons and all that stuff. So and so I think they're realizing, okay, we can only cost cut so much. People aren't buying that this is luxurious. So we got to go back to, putting all this actual stuff you can touch and feel and appreciate and smell, into the car instead. Anyway, and also Nico says he forgot his signature of his pony blasting by. Thank you so much, Nico, for the super chat there. And Darnell, thank you so much for super chat as well. He says, glad the small videos are working for you. I'm very thankful for all of you that watch them as well and share them and enjoy them. It's very good to see that this week. It's a huge relief to see stuff that actually is maybe working a little bit, and kind of reversing, the decline here a little bit. We'll see again how far that goes, but I'm very, very excited to see that. So thank you. And Jordan, thank you so much for being a member for 27 months now. I really appreciate it. He says, what is solid state battery? YouTube has flooded my feed with that term of battery breakthroughs, different battery versus a 2015 Nissan Leaf. Yes. So I'm not an expert on all the chemistry of solid state, but the essential difference is that there isn't any of the lithium and the liquid stuff. It's solid state is more, I think it's like sodium based. There's also separate sodium based batteries that aren't solid state, but regardless, solid state batteries have always been like the golden battery tech that is going to kind of be a true leap forward in not only cars, but anything that uses a battery, because they charge super fast, like 5-minute recharge time for giant car battery packs. I mean, when you're talking about a phone or you're talking about, something like that, I mean, it's like an instant charge. It's basically just, as long as you have something to power it, I mean, it's like, there's no such thing as battery life worries. The batteries last way longer. They're way more power dense. They're way safer as well because they don't have the, same propensity to explode when punctured and things like that. So it's a much safer, it's just better in all the ways. The problem is that it's always been tricky to make them durable. That we've had solid state battery technology in the lab for a long time, but when you have it out in the wild, it just a lot of times it didn't actually work very well. And so that's why, we're seeing this. I think at CES, there was a company that just came out with, don't remember the name of the company, but are claiming to have the first, I think, consumer ready solid state battery in a car. Now, Mercedes took the record of the first solid state battery in a moving vehicle, I believe, like actually out on public roads. There's an EQS prototype. I believe that hit the road in 2024. And I talked about that in a weekly update way back when. But there's, and I think, I can't remember what it was doing in that. But there's all kinds of, different like sodium battery packs, which are even cheaper, and there's some good progress there. But solid state is really, I think, going to be the key to unlocking a lot of different things. Like, because the battery packs can be so much smaller, they're lighter, and so that opens up a lot more sports car potential. Where like Pagani has said, we'll never do an electric car until the batteries get lighter, because a lightweight vehicle is key to them, and many others. Same thing goes for Miatas, stuff like that. You'll never see an electric Miata until you get solid state in play, I think, because then I think, and then don't quote me on this, but I think it is at least equivalent to like what a gas engine kind of weighs. And I think again, as the technology progresses, it could even be lighter. So it's really, kind of, yeah, going to be revolutionary once that hits mainstream. And obviously, China's going to probably beat us to the punch because they're the only ones actually really going hard on the EV development. I mean, Europe's doing a pretty good job too, again, like Mercedes and others, but with just how fast they're progressing in China with that, I'm sure they'll hit it first. I think, the early discussion was, I think Lexus is working and Toyota, they're I think early 2030s for them. Nissan was saying early 2030s. They were working on this for a while. And I don't know about any others. But it's yeah, it's going to be awesome, and it sounds like there's actual real progress, and this is something that's not just vaporware. For decades it was always like this pipe dream, and now it was almost like fusion energy, which is another one of these like pipe dream ideas that like there's little promising hints that, hey, maybe we've made a breakthrough here on this, and solved many of our problems in the world. But like, solid state is another one of those things. But it sounds like, again, because I think largely because of especially cars where the recharge time is more important than a battery and a phone or something like that. I think the cars have really spurred that development, and the money that's poured into automotive batteries has really helped to kind of get that to a next level finally, and get those breakthroughs that just needed the investments to become a reality, I think. So it's going to be very exciting, and that's why, again, we're very, very early on as far as EVs. And once you're at 5 minute recharge times and you're at the same weight as a gas powered vehicle, and you have 600 plus miles of range, and it doesn't cost an arm and a leg. I mean, initially, the first few on the market are going to be expensive because it's one of those things, as you ramp up production, it gets cheaper and cheaper, but it will be a very expensive premium kind of thing at first. But I think as you go later into the 2030s, it will become more commonplace. And then that's when it's, going to be really compelling. It's going to be much better for the environment as well, because you're not doing all the mining that you need to do. So it's going to get even cleaner than EVs already are, which is already a net positive over gas from cradle to grave, as engineering explained and others have kind of ran the math and demonstrated in the past. But it's going to get even better with that. So it's really it's great to see that CES there's some more of this. There's a lot of vaporware at CES, so I don't know about that company in particular, but again, Mercedes actually has this stuff driving around in cars. And so it's happening slowly but surely, and so I'm excited for that for sure. But definitely check out Solid State if you haven't been aware of those developments in the past year or two here. It's very promising. And Chad, thank you so much for a super chat as well. He says, most important for safety structure or mitigation, or maybe like what is the most important for a vehicle? I mean, I think for me, the structure is the most important because the tech has limitations, and certainly it helps stop a lot of stuff. But I don't think to me, at least personally, at the end of the day, I want a safe structure. If I'm in a Miata, which again, I love Miatas, but if I'm in a Miata and it's got all the safety tech, that's great. But if someone else's car doesn't have that tech, or if someone has turned that stuff off, or they're just hell bent on being crazy, I still don't have a whole lot helping me out there, versus regardless of what else is going on, or what happens to my car, if it's a safe car, then that to me that's kind of the better thing. I mean, I'm kind of the prime example of this with both of the Mustang accidents. Getting sideswiped by a motorcyclist, there's no tech that would have helped me with that. I mean, even with the evasive steer stuff, I had nowhere to go. I was catching a sliding motorcyclist essentially that had overcooked the turn. My choices would have been to just drive off the side of the hill or do what I did, so, which was just like brace myself, try and slow down as much as I could, as fast as I could, and there's no way to avoid it really. So like that's the kind of thing where like having that pretty good structure in the Mustang really helped me. Same thing with the tree that fell out of the sky and crushed the roof. No safety tech was going to save me from that. So it was just, I'm very thankful that the roof of the Mustang, and also just dumb luck, made it so that I, came out of that without a scratch. So to me, I've firsthand experience. I very much want a safe structure. Now, again, a lot of other people though, they have different priorities, but for me, that's important. But it's important to have both for sure. Having them work hand in hand is ideal if you can have top notch for both of those. And thank you so much for the super chat there, Chad. And also thank you for gifting a membership too, Chad. I really appreciate that. And Patricia, thank you so much for a super chat as well. She says, "You make the world a better place every day. Your videos make me feel so much better when I'm down. You always nail it." I really appreciate that, Patricia. And I'm so happy that the videos do that for you. That's really great. And yeah, again, especially like a week after this one here, it's nice to have some distractions. And obviously, again, it's important to, give those things attention and, not completely, run and hide, but like, there's, even, I mean, like someone even commented on the Nissan Z video and was like, finally some good news this week, and I think that's the kind of, I guess, nice upside of, staying in my lane as hard as it is sometimes to not, use my platform to, share my views on things outside of cars. I think keeping it to the cars is helpful for people who just want to, come and have that little new car that they're checking out, or, see me have fun in a car or whatever, or at least have some extra guidance, some extra information, whatever the case might be. Hopefully that does, help many of you. And so thank you so much for the feedback on that, Patricia. I really appreciate that. And yeah, I'm hoping to do a lot more of that here this year, and hopefully even more entertaining stuff with the rants, which, I want to make sure that the rants don't stay, I want to keep them light, even though there's, some things that get me upset, I also, those rants, it's very much like these are all first world problems. These are things, again, in the grand scheme of things, and the real problems in the world, Stellantis dropping all their plug-in hybrids, it's small potatoes, and so hopefully, the rants don't become, too negative or anything, and it's all just kind of, me, freaking out, for lack of a better term, but it's not too serious still, and I'm able to kind of make light of it, and hopefully even those become entertaining. But I'm hoping to just keep them kind of funny, as best I can, even whenever it is something that makes no sense. We can laugh at the nonsensical decision that Subaru made, or that this other company made, or whatever the case might be, and and I think sometimes that's it can be its own relief in a way. So yeah, thank you so much, though, Patricia. And Kraken, thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships. I really appreciate that as well. And happy to see that B. Mitchell and Nico are able to go in, as well as OK's bassist. There, the Prelude, and also a couple other new faces there. But so happy to see so many regulars able to get that as well. And so thanks so much for the generosity there, Kraken. And also, Chad, thanks for gifting another membership. I really appreciate that too. And all right, and let me see here. So getting back to the other member questions here. Where were we here? Don't want to get too far behind, so I'll try and stay concise here. So Lantern Tail says the Toyota Highlander has a weird history. The first gen was a 2-row midsize. Second through fourth were 3-row smaller SUVs. The Toyota Crown is basically the first gen Highlander. Yeah. And it's it's just tough, because it's like, I mean, I've said this, I think we've already discussed this in the past. When I was on the Grand Highlander launch, I asked the Toyota PR people, I'm like, where does this leave Highlander? Because, and at the time it was, Grand Highlander started higher because it started with XLE. Now I believe, it starts with the LE there. But at the time it started higher. So like, okay, well, regular Highlanders for someone who either, wants to stay cheap, or they want to, they don't need the maximum amount of space. But the pricing is so close these days that it's like, just get the Grand Highlander. I really can't find a justification, especially now that there is a lower trim of Grand Highlander. I think Toyota figured out no one's going for that. Everyone's just going to spring for the little bit extra for the Grand Highlander, even if you have to start with XLE. And so, I mean, Highlander actually still sells decently, which is honestly surprising. I thought it would have really fallen off a cliff completely. It has some staying power. I think for some people, Grand Highlander is just too big. It is really big, and I mean, for most of those buyers, again, over 134,000, I think, in 2025. I mean, that's the right move. You can never have too much space for most of those buyers, but there are some who say, "Oh, I parallel park every day. I don't want to have the extra length of the Grand Highlander," or whatever the case is. So there's certainly a case to be made for it still, but it's just a different kind of case, and it's but it's like, where do you go with it? Because you can't go rugged with it because they have all the other rugged stuff. And now you got Crown Signia, so it's like even just making it back to a two row is probably not going to do you any favors there either. I mean, could be different still, but it's just they. I kind of wonder, Toyota right now kind of reminds me, as far as the like let's fill every niche kind of mentality. It kind of reminds me of the Germans from a few years back with Mercedes having three or four different convertibles for every size segment, and having three or four wagons, having coupe versions of every SUV, having, the A class, and then also the CLA, and, just too much overlap. And it just got to a point where they're like, look, this isn't sustainable. And they scaled back, at least in the States. They dropped the A class sedan, they dropped, most of the coupes, most of the convertibles, just honed in on, okay, we'll have one good coupe with the CLE. There's also the AMG GT, but as far as regular stuff goes, it was like, all right, well, let's just do one good one and not have three of them instead. And I just, Toyota is the largest company in the world as far as car companies goes. So like they have, the luxury of, they can have that overlap, and it's not probably as painful for them as it is for some of the smaller companies. But I still just kind of wonder if, they take a look in the mirror at some point and they say, all right, look, we love all of these models to death. It was really fun bringing back all these things, making Land Cruiser more affordable, all this stuff. But it's like, okay, like, what deserves to really stay? I mean, I love them all. I really think it's hard for me to pick a bad thing in the group. I think Sequoia is the weakest link right now, but Sequoia is too important for the towers and stuff that I think that one, even if it is the weakest link, it still deserves a new generation that is better, because they just, from the very get-go of this generation of Sequoia, they just screwed up the cargo area. They completely screwed it up. I think they kind of know it with the way they try to get creative with the shelving and the back and stuff, which is always a sign that you're not working with the best cargo area. But like, that's really the only one. But if that were the one that I say you get rid of because it's the least compelling, even still, like, there's still a lot there. So it'll be interesting to see, where they go with all that. So. And now they've even more with you have BZ Woodland, CHR, kind of. I mean, at least those are electric, so that separates things a little bit. But it's like there's so much there. It's a lot. Makes for great content though, because I can keep going back to the well of Toyota and the giant portfolio they have, and they all usually get pretty good views too. So I'm not mad about the zillions of Toyotas out there that are available to review. But it's kind of interesting the way their setup is right now. And Cam says, hey, everyone, got to say bye to the ILX for a little because it's going back to the dealer to get some small cosmetic stuff fixed. Honda paint. I'm sorry to hear. I mean, I'm still waiting to get the Lyric back to the dealer. They're like, for some reason, I guess they clear out a bunch of their loaners towards the end of the year. At least this Cadillac dealer does. And so he's like, it's been like, I mean, I called them because I did that video about the complaints I have on the Lyric. That was like, the end of the year pretty much. And I called them, even, several days before that. So it's been probably close to 3 weeks that I've been waiting, and they're like, we'll let you know, the first on the list. If we, as soon as we get a loaner in, we'll bring the Lyric in and get that stuff taken care of. Because same thing with, the alignment issues and stuff that I talked about for the doors where it's chipping and stuff. Excuse me. So yeah, we'll be probably getting into a loaner here at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later, because it's crazy. Like every morning that Beth goes out and opens the front door, her driver's door to the Lyric, like it's actually like popping the charge door now with like that. It's because it's right on that hinge there. And it's it sounds terrible. And she's like, I hope I don't like break the charge door because it actually sounds like it's gonna break off or something. And I don't know how that actually got worse. Like, how does it keep getting more and more out of alignment? I don't know if it's like a expand contracting kind of thing with the cold or something. I don't know what the deal is, but yeah, I'm hoping they get that taken care of here soon. Um, but yeah, best of luck with the ILX. Hopefully, it's quick and easy for you to get those things taken care of. And Darnell says, I don't know what the world is doing so far in 2026, but hopefully, all is enjoying their families and what's important in life. Yeah, definitely. Always got to appreciate the people in your life because as this week showed, that's never guaranteed. So it's definitely always important to do your best to enjoy that. And Darnell also says Car Wise this week was disappointed. Toyota didn't announce an MR2. Yeah, that was a massive troll. I gotta say. I mean, because they did actually tease in their anime series, that they're gonna do new Celica, new MR2, Supra, and all that kind of stuff. And I still firmly believe that's all happening. But then if you guys didn't see the little teaser thing for the Tokyo Auto Salon, it was like a conversation. It was just audio of Maritza, which is Akio Toyota, and I can't remember who the person, he was talking to some other GR person. They're like, well, should we bring the mid-engined thing? And they're like, yeah, we should. He's like, should we do more to it? And so they kind of hinted that it was going to be something modified. So that's why I was like, oh, it's going to be some modded car. So I kind of knew it probably wasn't going to be, the MR2. But I didn't think it was going to be a lifted K truck. I thought it was going to be like an old MR2 or something that kind of is teasing or hinting at maybe the future. It's kind of funny that they're, they understand what they're doing full well. And so massive troll there. Also, same with Subaru. I don't know if Subaru actually meant it because I think Subaru actually is sincere in them being like, this is great. But it's like, I think we're just kind of a little bit spoiled as underwhelming as Subaru is in the States. We are a little bit spoiled that we've had a manual WRX since this generation came out, and Japan has not. It's been CVT only there until this one that just got announced this week. The prior gen, of course, was manual for them, but this new generation was all CVT. So I'm very happy for those in Japan. I'm sure for them, again, there's going to be probably a line around the corner and down the block, to order those, new manual WRXs. But like, the STI badge, again, I talked about this in the rant already, so I won't rehash that. But like they just put the STI badge on anything with wheels, pretty much in Japan. So, probably a lot of stuff without wheels as well. But like it's yeah, and that's why I did the video back in December when they had the first teaser, and I saw all the, news sites, and I saw, the YouTubers and already, saying, oh, it's going to be a new STI. And I'm like, it's not going to be an actual STI. I saw it coming from a mile away, and not to toot my own horn, but like I called this like 3 weeks ago, I called this. And it, some people are still trying to, clickbait it by being like, it's a new STI and it sucks. And it's like, it's not an STI. That's why it sucks. But, I guess some people, that's what they feel they need to do to get the clicks, whatever. But, yeah, it's very much not an STI. And anyone that takes 10 seconds to read, the basic headline there for the car and already knows that. But, yeah, it's it's an interesting choice there. And Raphael says, I try my best not to keep up with the news, but with everyone saying this week was bad, I'm curious. Well, yeah, everyone has the right choice for them as far as what the right exposure to news is. Beth is the same way. She doesn't really follow stuff too closely. It just it just affects her mental health too much if she goes too much into it. I have a higher tolerance for mental pain, I suppose I should say. And so, for me, it's something I do keep up with. But yeah, I don't blame anyone that doesn't, because it's tough. And it's also just, the human brain is kind of not designed to handle that either. And for so long, I won't go on the tangent for long, I promise. But, like what was the, I mean, you look at, how upset everyone is these days and how, the quality of life as far as mental health goes is so terrible because of all the news exposure. And it's like, you know, even 15 years ago, you got local news, or, especially if you go back to like the 20th century, the 90s, the 80s, whatever, maybe you saw the evening news if you really bothered, maybe you read the newspaper if you're really, you're staying up to date on current events and stuff. But like you got a paragraph maybe once a day about, oh, look, there's something going on in Iran, or there's, whatever the case is. And it was such limited exposure. The things that you actually were exposed to was, oh, look, we got a new mayor, or minor little things. I mean, obviously you still had presidential elections and stuff like that you'd get some news on, but like it was so minimal with the amount of exposure. And also just like in a newspaper, there's only so much you can cover, versus now, with the internet at our fingertips, you have, you know, thousands and thousands of horrible things in the world that you could do research on that, many of us are ignorant to. And other people feel very upset that we're ignorant to that. But it's like there's only so many horrible things you can stay up to date on, honestly, and follow. And again, it doesn't give, it doesn't mean you can just check out and not worry about, problems in the world, but like there's a limit. I mean, you can only be an expert on so many things. Same thing with cars. I can't be an expert on 800 cars. I can't be an expert on the 800 human rights violations that are going on all around the world at any one point in time, or whatever. So like we all kind of have to pick and choose what the right exposure is and what things we want to make our causes and be passionate about, and what is, what we can handle. It's not like even, something is a convenient cop out or something. It's just like, for everyone's own mental health, there's only so much you can handle, and so I think that's why, as much as you don't want to just, completely stick your head in the sand, sometimes I think it's important to have these other, distractions, for lack of a better term, and other things like cars and like, other stuff. Because there is more to life, than just the last horrible thing that happened in the news and in the country and in the world, and, all that. So it's yeah. And again, that's different for everyone. But yeah, for me, I allow myself to, read a little bit of news in the morning. I scroll through, my news app a little bit, and then I'm pretty much done for the day. And on the weekends, a lot of times I'm so busy. Like today, I have not looked at a single piece of news. So if there's anything crazy that happened today, I don't even know about it. And so there are some times where I got too much stuff going on. And it's funny though, like those are the days where I'm out running around, I'm filming, 2 car reviews, or I'm bouncing around, or I'm driving to the junkyard and back, or whatever the case is. Like those are the days where I often do feel better because I'm not, doom scrolling and intaking all the, horrors of the world, so it's, totally get it, Raphael. And yeah, Beth's right there with you with not really following stuff too much. Let me see. Lantern Tail says the Nissan Quest was an interesting minivan. My parents had an '05 Quest. The one you saw was a refresh. We had a pre-refresh with the gauge cluster in the middle of the dashboard. It's very similar to Tesla. The Quest had the same VQ as the 350 and had a 5-speed automatic. The thing sounds amazing. Yeah, and I got that wrong. So for anyone who's unaware, he was talking about the junkyard walk, because I also do shorts of those. So even if you don't have time to watch the 30 to hour and 10-minute long junkyard walks that I post on the Relics of the Rust Belt, second channel that I have, I do shorts. And one of the shorts was on the Quest that I spotted in the junkyard, which was like really pristine for the most part. I mean, it was really in good shape, very complete too. It had like double TVs in the roof, and it had little quadrant like skylights. There's like maybe 4 of them throughout the ceiling there, and it was really cool. And yeah, I got it wrong though, because I thought they all had CVTs, and that was I just again I can't be an expert on every car, especially those older ones where it was before I started doing reviews and stuff. So I was kind of a little bit out of the loop, especially because like that was, I think the one I spotted was maybe an '07 or something. Like that point in time, I was Super Dorks fan. I'm only worried about like sport compacts with turbos, preferably. That was like really the focus. So I mean, I saw quests and things like that, but it just stuff that I wasn't super bothering to memorize the specs on and and all that stuff. So I appreciate all the corrections, and many of those I do get a lot of stuff wrong in those junkyard walks because I'm just spitballing while I'm walking around, looking at what I can figure out, just on the surface there. But I didn't realize they actually were non CVT and had the VQ. That actually sounds like a really cool combo. And I wonder, is that someone must have done a build, because I feel like every single build idea has already been probably covered 10 times over. But I wonder if anyone's done like a crazy VQ quest build. I feel like that could be a fun thing just for the heck of it to get some views. That could be a fun build idea for someone. But that's cool that your parents had one though, and you got to experience that. And Nico says, when I walked into the Ford dealer, I said, I want that one, and let's go talk numbers. Settled on a number in 30 minutes. That's impressive. You're the dream customer. I mean, I'm sure you drove a hard bargain, but as far as not beating around the bush and jerking people around, because they get so much of that. Someone like you is a breath of fresh air, even if they got to give you a big discount, at least, there's no BS. And that's, I mean, some dealers still manage to screw it up, because like, that's how my deal on the Fiesta ST fell through. Cause I don't know if I've fully told that whole story. I mean, I think, I've kind of discussed it in past lives, over the past several years. But, like before I went for the EcoBoost Mustang and had decided, okay, I'm going to do, this fundraising campaign and try and make this into more of a content car, when the Mini was falling apart, in the first few months there, I was like, all right, well, this is not something I want to stick with, because I don't know, I don't want to have this thing in the shop every other month. I strongly considered a Fiesta ST, and there was one of my local dealers here had a blue one. It didn't have the Recaro package, it didn't have the cooler seats or anything, but it was just a regular base blue Fiesta ST that I test drove, and I came really close. I came back, I talked numbers. I love the Fiesta ST. As many of you know, you saw my review probably if you've been watching for a long time. I think that was 2014 I did that review, and that's when I was negotiating for the Fiesta ST. But I sat down and I looked at the numbers, and I was like, the numbers look okay, but I was like, I felt like there was a little more meat on the bone. I was like, look, can we do a little bit better here? The problem really was that the Mini I think I had some negative equity on it, because I had equity from the BRZ that I rolled into, I put that positive equity into the Mini. So I feel like I just didn't want to completely lose my butt on the Mini, because I'd only financed it 4 or 5 months prior. And I just was trying to get a little more out of the Mini, and they just weren't budging on that side of it. I was like, I got to walk away. But I was this close to signing the papers. And I still do wonder how things would have gone differently if that would have been the way that I went, if I didn't do the EcoBoost Mustang and I just had that Fiesta until the Bullet or whatever. But yeah, that was one of the ones where they actually screwed up the deal, because I was pretty much a straight shooter. I'm like, look, this is what I need. This is where the car needs to be at, and they just were trying to play hardball a little bit. And I'm like, all right, I'm done. And I remember the next night I went to the movies, and they were blowing up my phone in the movie theater, and I sent it straight to voicemail, and they're like, oh, sorry, we didn't work with you. Like, we really want to sell the car. And they came down pretty close. They didn't come to exactly my demands, but they came really close, but they had kind of at that point pissed me off. And whatever, it's like, all right, well, you guys are jerking me around, and I don't like that. Then it's like, it kind of turns me off to the whole idea, even if it is actually closer to what I was wanting. I debated going back, because again, I did really love that car, and that was back when Beth had her regular Fiesta. So I was like, oh, it's gonna be really fun. Like, she got the regular one, I got the ST, and kind of his and hers Fiestas, because I enjoyed hers. Hers was really cool, and so it was close. But I kind of wonder, because I mean, as well as the channel did, I think the EcoBoost very much did help to propel me, because it was kind of my first more advanced project kind of car. Because I mean, the BRZ, I did an exhaust and an intake, and that's pretty much it. Versus the EcoBoost, I did the tune, I did the full exhaust, I did lowering springs, and all this other stuff. And I think that that was probably the right call, still, but I know that there were a lot of people that didn't like the fundraising component. And I don't blame them, looking back on it, that, I completely understand the people that didn't enjoy that component of it. But I just kind of wonder, how the channel would have gone if I would have just had the Fiesta ST and, where it would have gone from there. But anyway, long tangent. I apologize for that. But it's just getting back to your discussion of, yeah, like if dealers play it right, they sell a car like they did for you. But there's other times like me where I'm like, yeah, I could make this a 30-minute sales deal for you, but then they don't they don't play ball. So you got lucky there. That's awesome, Nico. And let me see. Also, Jaeger is the pronunciation there, Jordan. I apologize. I've mispronounced. Definitely something I'm guilty of. Lots of mispronunciation. So I'll remember that for next time. Mr. 705 says, it's really good to see your effort on the new content is working. I know. I'm very relieved. Hopefully it keeps on working. We'll see, because, I've had many algorithm changes in the past too that I was, doing okay, and then rug pull. So, but I mean, I think this definitely, yeah, I'm very optimistic. Hopefully it works out. And Kraken says, hey, Matt, big news. Kraken is back. The problem was loose front lug nuts. Not my first time. Interesting. Well, I'm glad that it's back and everything's all good and you can get back to enjoying that car, because I know you enjoy that thing more than probably anyone else enjoys their Kona N. They're fun, fantastic cars, but I feel like, you're so passionate about it. And so I'm very happy that it's back to being in your hands to enjoy. He also says, but also had a nice cars and coffee with 8 of my N friends. Helped one install his transmission mount bushings as well as his X-Force mid pipe. Sounded awesome. Very much like the AFE Takeda on mine. Nice. That's awesome. And he says, then my other friend said his wife is heavily looking into the Kona N because it feels so much like the Focus RS she had. Never thought they could be crossed together. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, I guess I can kind of see that a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of differences, but um, yeah, yeah, I wouldn't think those two would be cross shopped either, because one's manual and all-wheel drive, the other's front wheel and automatic. But yeah, I mean, I love the idea that, yeah, at least it's a hatch. It's got that practicality component for sure, and it's not even really that high. That it kind of feels more like a a big hatch than it does an SUV or a crossover. So yeah, and he also says spot of the week was an Aston Martin DBX 707, black with some orange accenting. Absolutely caught my eye. That's awesome. I never see DBXs around here, and I don't know if it's just we don't have an Aston dealer nearby, or nearest one is in Cleveland. So I think that kind of hurts Aston sales around here. I mean, it's not like Cleveland's only a 2-hour drive, so like if I had the money, I'd totally still happily drive 2 hours for service. The one time a year you probably need it, but that's awesome. You saw a DBX 707. That's great. And Bulls fan dropping in with a 6.7 there. And Lantern Tail says John Cena bought the new Prelude. I mean, John Cena, he is a really cool guy, it seems. Maybe there's some caveats there. Again, I don't follow him super closely, but he is absolutely a Honda. I don't even know if he's like an ambassador, because I mean he does the voiceovers for the commercial, so he is paid by Honda. So absolutely, don't consider him to be like an unbiased thing. And I guarantee you, they gave him the Prelude, or they said, "Oh, we'll give you a free Prelude if you do the next voiceover for the holiday season," or whatever the case is. So it's, I mean, I don't know, because I think that he said even with the Type R, I saw a Facebook post when he got the FL5 Type R, and he was like, "Oh, I just was in for an oil change, and they had an FL5 in the showroom. I just said, oh, I'm gonna go for it and just buy it." And at the time, I was like, "Oh, that's awesome!" But like now, seeing how much he works with Honda, I'm like, "There's no way that there wasn't some assistance there, and that they didn't say, this is John effing Cena, like we're going to roll out the red carpet and like, go, and make this a thing." So I don't know how much of that's legitimate. I haven't seen what his comments are about Prelude. If he starts, pulling a Honda Pro Jason and saying it's, great and it's as good as a Type R and all this other stuff, then, the credibility goes out the window for me. But if, he just wants to get good fuel economy and doesn't want to, sit in traffic with his manual Type R, by all means, I mean, Prelude is gonna be great, and certainly, he has no problem paying 42 grand for a 200 horsepower, car. So he's probably one of the few people that maybe actually makes sense for a huge Honda fan with money to burn. Exactly the target market for the Prelude, I think, but I think that's a very small demographic. So I still wish them the best. I will say though, the other thing about Prelude, while we're on the topic, you know, man, I really despise all the clickbait crap that's out there, as you all are well aware. But like, there's multiple headlines in the past week. Oh, Honda only sold like 120 Preludes in 2025 or something like that. And it's like, of course, because they started showing up at dealers like 2 weeks before the end of the year. Like, of course they did. I mean, honestly, I'm surprised they sold that many because I mean the media drive hasn't even happened for that car. There's they're not in the press fleet. Like, I mean, and usually that stuff comes pretty early from Honda. They're not usually that far behind dealers. I mean, I work with a Honda dealer. That's one of the ones under the Cochrane umbrella that the conglomerate that I work with for some of the used stuff and all that. And I keep checking their website every day, say, oh, let's see if they got a Prelude in yet. Because, I mean, there's been some of these things where I'm like, if I can get it faster from a dealer, even though I will get one eventually as a press car, probably, as long as Honda, doesn't doesn't get too pissed off at me with whatever rants I do in the future. I've just like I've been looking, and like most dealers have not even gotten one in yet. So those kinds of headlines is like, yes, we all know that, like, everyone wants to say, I told you so, Prelude sucks. I mean, again, I'm in that crowd too, but like, let's have some reason here. And like, I mean, I guess again, the clickbait works and people fell for it. And like, oh, look, it's a failure already. And they don't understand that it's, only been at dealers, a week or two before. And there's maybe only 152 units that actually arrived at dealers before the end of the year. I think it's going to probably not sell super well though, for sure. But I didn't know he bought one, so I'll have to look into that. Thanks for the heads up, though, Lantern Tales, on that. Also, sorry I missed the other super chats. Man, YouTube is not good with notifying me of these. So Chad, thank you so much for another super chat. He says, we're watching 11/22/63 on Netflix, and there are so many amazing cars throughout the entire series. JFK Time Travel miniseries, highly recommend. I love 11/22/63. I watched it. I think it launched on Hulu in the early days. So this was probably 2016 when that came out or something. I'm a big time travel fan, and historical time travel stuff like that is exactly up my alley. Like, trying to alter the past for good. Another show, if you're enjoying that, Timeless. There was a huge cult following, not a huge, but there was a very dedicated cult following for Timeless. I think they got 2 seasons, and then they had like a little like mini movie at the very end because fans demanded it that much, and there was so much outcry because it was like amazing and certainly had far more time to go, and they pulled the plug because it just wasn't getting the views. Familiar tale. But Timeless is like 11/22/63, except it's a different time period every episode. I mean, there's still an overarching storyline, but Timeless is really good too. But yeah, 11/22/63, I wholeheartedly also one up that recommendation. Amazing show. And if you enjoy that, after you're done with that, Timeless, you will not be disappointed. If you haven't seen Timeless, oh man, so it actually ranks up. I mean, there's a lot of shows I love. I have Seinfeld back there and stuff, but Timeless is definitely in my top 5 favorite shows of all time. It's so good in my opinion. And it's just, for me, it's also, I'm a sucker for the time travel stuff. It's just a very, very, I think, soothing kind of idea of like, getting out of your current time period, trying to make things better. That's why I love Back to the Future and stuff. This idea that, you can improve the future and all that kind of stuff. And it's just a fun fantasy. And I do not to go off the rails too much, but I believe that time travel is possible. We just haven't gotten there yet. And I think that kind of explains some of the possible UFO stuff, if any of you are believers of that kind of stuff, which is another fun tangent I won't go down. But yeah, so anyway, thanks for the recommendation in the chat. I'm glad you enjoyed it. It's always fun to see another person that enjoys that show. It's definitely worth watching. And Darnell, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, sounds like this is y'all's last Cadillac. I mean, honestly, these issues don't really bother us that much. I mean, like it's yeah, it's certainly not great, but like to me, the important stuff is still really great. All the, it drives great, it's reliable, knock on wood. I mean, we're not that far into ownership, but like it's reliable. We love the way it drives. Everything else about it is pretty good. I mean, yeah, the 7 complaints are absolutely legitimate complaints, and I wish I didn't have to say 7 different things, but it's we really like it. And especially like if they get, if they do all the fixes really well and we really like it. I mean, there's even a potential we've already talked about, possibly buying out the lease at the end if the price is right. The contracted price is not good, because the way they did the lease with Cadillacs, they did kind of a creative way of bundling it in to make the lease price lower, which kind of inflated the residual. So the buy it out price that's listed in the contract is not what we would do. But supposedly there's negotiation room there, and you can say, hey, look, I can either let this car go, you can send it to auction, and you can get, you know, 2/3 of what this contract price is, or I'll give you fair market value for it. And I keep it. You don't have to deal with it. And we get the same car we enjoy and have the history with. And kind of cut the chase and cut the whole middleman BS of auctioning it off, taking it somewhere else, reconditioning it, blah, 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 and so we'll see. Obviously we still got another year and a half pretty much on the lease here. So time will tell. Maybe it'll turn out to be even worse, and maybe it'll turn out to be that this is the last issue we have with it. I don't know, but we do really love it. It's a fantastic vehicle, and I mean I've seen in the comments of the Lyric complaint video, there's some people that say, yeah, I had this similar issue, or I had one of these things, not all 7, but I had one of these things. I think we truly just got bad luck with not getting a great one. But so yeah, no, it hasn't turned us off the Cadillacs by any means, and it hasn't turned us off to the Lyric or even our Lyric. We still like it a lot. Beth loves the green, and yeah, we're very happy with it. It's been a good car, and again, because these are just minor things, and this is the stuff like Consumer Reports. This is why I think their stuff you have to take with a grain of salt, because a lot of the reliability issues are like, oh, my Bluetooth doesn't connect. It's like, to me, that's not a reliability issue. Like, yes, technically your Bluetooth is unreliable, but like when I'm thinking of car reliability, I spent many days, well, not full days, but I had multiple times where I was, stranded on the side of the road with my parents in our Ford Tempo. That's a reliability issue. That's the stuff that actually ruins your day. Not having Bluetooth connection, I mean, maybe if you got no bigger issues in your life, could really ruffle your feathers. But for me, I got far bigger fish to fry than to, have my day be ruined because my Bluetooth doesn't connect one time. But that's like that, like Consumer Reports says, oh, well, this car is not reliable because the Bluetooth's a little iffy, because cars have gotten so reliable and they have to, badmouth something. So it's like, oh, well, here's the things that are wrong. But a lot of these things, again, are real minor, not big issues. And I think that all the Lyric stuff kind of falls under that. Sure, the car's doors should have been aligned properly. Sure, I shouldn't have my paint chipping off when I open a door. That's crazy. But again, I think that's a very rare outlier kind of thing. That's why I'm not holding it against the company. There's someone who, goes and gets one of the 500,000 RAV4s a year and the motor blows in the first 1,000 miles. Or, you have some wheel fall off. I mean, there's things that happen. And I think, there's no perfect car. There's no perfect brand. And I was talking to my neighbor about this just the other day, because the ones that had the CRV that blew up on them, that I did the video on that, they got a Forester, and then she's like, oh, I just found that there's this class action lawsuit against Subaru Eyesight. And she's like, I don't know how you deal with these cars. Like, every car has all these issues these days. And she's kind of just disillusioned with cars in general. Like, she just thinks they're all garbage now. And, I mean, I can certainly sympathize with that, but I told her, I'm like, it's just like people, no one's perfect. No car is perfect, and you always have luck of the draw. You never know what you're going to get. You think you could get the most perfect car ever, and then someone wrecks it, or, it randomly fails in the same way, sometimes things don't work out with with people or whatever. And I'm like, it's the same thing where like you find the flaws you can live with or the things that aren't ideal that you can make your peace with, and that's what you go with. And you stick with that as long as it makes sense, and it's I think that's kind of how I kind of you know rationalize some of these things, and don't let it kind of drive me crazy, because it could, if it's like, oh, every car is garbage, and I see plenty of those comments all the time, and whatever I'm reviewing, oh, Toyota Grand Highlander is garbage, Hyundai is garbage, Kia is garbage, everything's garbage to many people. And again, everyone has different experiences, and some of those are very valid with why they feel the way they do. But for me, maybe I'm just lucky to have all of the experiences I've had, but there's quality issues with everyone at times. It's just one of those things. But we'll see. I mean, for us, it's going to be, what's the best deal in, 2027 as far as what we go with too. I think, as much as we love the Lyric, if the deals suck for them and they won't give us a good price, to buy out ours, yeah, we'll say goodbye to it. And that's the beauty of a lease. You are onto something else. So we'll see what happens. But Chad, thank you for a super chat as well. He says evolution from first gen Kona to now is crazy. Yeah, it has really, like every Hyundai, they've had such a glow up, and they're all so impressive. And yeah, they did a great job on the new Kona. And also, Lance Wath, sorry I missed it till now, but thank you so much for gifting 10 memberships. I really appreciate that, and happy to see some familiar faces there, as well as some new ones able to get those memberships. That's awesome, and hopefully some of them can join in here as well. And also, Lance, well, thank you so much for another super chat. Thank you so much for that. He says, if it ever goes to streaming, the 80s show Voyagers, I think you'd like. Interesting. Yeah, I don't think I have that one on my radar, so I'll have to remember that one here. That sounds fun, especially like an 80s take on that kind of stuff. Yeah, it could be very fun. So I appreciate the recommendation. I'll add it to my list. I've been starting to like, there's so many shows and movies, since I now have unfortunately very little free time. I'm starting to make a list of like, I don't want to forget about this show or this movie, and I want to make sure I see this. So like now I'm making a running list of like all the stuff that I'm seeing out there. I'm like, oh, I want to watch that, but I have to again put it on my long watch later playlist, just like YouTube. So I'll have to add that one. Thanks for the recommendation, Lancelot. And also for the super chat there. He says, I'll try to find a trailer for it and DM it to you. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, back on topic here. I promise I'll try and go 5 minutes without a tangent. Where were we here? Let me get a drink. Bulls fan says, I would buy an Elantra N in a heartbeat if only it had a better audio system. I think it's a Bose, isn't it? I mean, I don't think it's a bad stereo. I think the Mazda 3 Bose is better, as is probably the Honda one slightly. But I mean, it's a Bose stereo. I have no issues. I mean, again, there's other things I could fault the Elantra N for, but the stereo, to me at least, isn't one of them. But maybe for you, I know there's a lot of Bose haters that just, no highs, no lows, got to be Bose. I've heard all the stuff, but I don't know. Modern Bose stereos, at least to my ears, sound pretty good, and that includes the Elantra N. And Mr. 705 says it's called Delivered on YouTube. Even if it's something you don't end up doing, I think you would like to watch. FYI, him and his team are currently doing 200 deals a month and $1,000 a deal. Wow. I'm curious how many people are on his team, because that's, man, that sounds like a lot of work. Even if you do 20 people, 10 deals a month, unless they're real easy deals, that's a lot of work. But man, they are raking in the money, plus whatever the YouTube channel is bringing in, which probably isn't peanuts either. Good for them. That's all. I can't believe that people are paying $1,000 to someone to help them out. That's great though. Yeah, I have to check it out, because I'm dying to see what kinds of cars and what kinds of people are paying $1,000 to have someone do the deal for them. But that's impressive. Yeah, I'm very thankful with these live streams. You can go back and like go through the stuff, the chat section here, after the fact, because I'm gonna have to go back and make notes of all this stuff, because yeah, Delivered and Voyagers, I'm gonna have to check both of those out here. Let me see. Patricia also says, best YouTuber ever, just like always. I always appreciate the love, Patricia. And Bulls fan says crumple zones as far as the choice between safety structure or mitigation. Yeah. And Nico says the subscription model is also a turnoff. If you're talking about for BMWs, I know they do a few subscription things. And yeah, I still feel like most people do not like that at all. And they're going to keep trying though, because it's too valuable to not, but Darnell says, I hate to be a Ford fanboy, but the S550, 650 with Magnaride and active exhaust is straight up superior to any BMW coupes under 75 grand as a daily. Yeah, I'd agree with that. I'd say I haven't spent really any time in the new M. I haven't spent any time at all in the new M4. The last generation I've spent some time in, and that was nice. But yeah, I mean, Mustang, it does a pretty good job, even with like, because I'm thinking like road noise, things like that, which BMW probably does a little bit better. But outside of that, yeah, for a daily, it's really hard to beat the Mustangs for sure. They are great. And I mean, obviously that's why I, spent almost 10 years, daily driving, or at least owning, the Bullet wasn't much of a daily driver, but, owning those. I mean, between all four of them, EcoBoost, I think I had like 28,000 miles on that when I was done with it. The GT, the first one, I think was 12,000. So we're at about 40 between those two. The second GT was, I think I got that like 15,000 and took that one to around 22 or so, I think. Another 7 there, so 47. Bullet ended up being around 20, I think, if I remember correctly. So probably, yeah, close to about 67, maybe 70,000 miles, which isn't a huge amount, but that I clocked in the S550s there. They're great daily drivers. I mean, I drove all over the place in those things. I mean, I think the longest trip, probably the longest trip was in the Bullet. I drove that straight through from Indianapolis after I did the Daytona 500, the Indy 500 with, that was the thing I did with Shell and Pennzoil with, Chris Fix, Engineering Explained, Humble Mechanic, Eric the Car Guy. We all kind of, did our police escort straight through, which was amazing. Definitely for those of you who maybe haven't been following along for super long or haven't, or skipped that video, it's incredible. I'm in the Bullet following Jason Penske in his S2000, supercharged S2000 at the time, Chris Fix in his, Drift Stang, Eric the Car Guy in his turboed Ford Fairmont, and then Humble Mechanic. I think he had one of the Golf Rs. I think maybe it was the R32. I can't remember. But he had his, and like huge lineups for the Indy 500. I mean, this is like what that whole city's like economy is based on, and like miles and miles of traffic, and we had police escorts, cops on motorcycles, and blowing all the red lights, zooming past everyone. I mean, which is a very privileged thing, and I'm sure everyone was giving us the middle finger too. But being in that privileged position was very, very cool to be zooming through and drive straight, into the infield of the Indy 500 there, and park up in the museum, parking area there on the infield was very, very special experience. But anyway, that was whenever we were done with that, drove straight from Indianapolis to Pittsburgh, which was, I think, what was that, 7.5 hours or so. I mean, it was amazing. Like the lack of fatigue. I mean, I did that and I didn't even feel tired when I got home. Like it was crazy how it's just like that thing, they just eat up miles in so much comfort. And that car, man, I miss that Bullet so much. As time has gone on, like I kind of, I guess became a little numb to, okay, like the Bullet's gone, and then I kind of just like, mentally moved on. But I've found myself in the past couple of months, especially like the missing the Bullet thing has kind of started to increase little by little. And it's, I just think back, I'm like, man, that was an epic car. Yeah, anyway, moving on. I probably broke my promise of tangents, but anyway, here, let me see. Jordan says, when it comes to crash testing, is there any data on the effects of built-in headrest speakers? No, I don't think anyone's really focused on that. I think headrests, regardless of what's in them, they're all properly secured, so they're not going to do anything unexpected, because they test for that to make sure they're not flying off because of the extra weight or whatever. They all have sufficient padding and, all have the proper things to make them safe. So yeah, I think there's no issues there. And let me see. And B. Mitchell's weighing in on the BMW thing. He says he was a BMW person since the 80s, but gave up on them when they went sideways in the early 2000s. Now I have a 19 Mustang GT, although an M2 is the closest I'd get to a new one. Yeah, I can understand that for sure. And M2 is great. I absolutely do love them. And Lantern Tail says, how would you rate the cars throughout the decades, 60s through the 2020s? It's a fun question. Rate, it's a relative term though, which is, I know, annoying because everyone just wants, the simple ranking, and the list and stuff. But for me, it's always more nuanced than that. I think the 60s was certainly, especially if we're talking enthusiast mindset, 60s was certainly, a high mark, that I think the 2010s kind of reprised that, of, okay, like we're not stuck with 300 horsepower V8s anymore. Now we're actually having these evolutions. We're having these real, horsepower wars. And so I think the 2010s were the 60s all over again. I think we were kind of seeing a cycle where I think, the 70s, obviously, until the oil crisis there in 73 and 74, or 70, yeah, mostly in 74. I think it was like end of 73 into early 74, I think. I actually just did an article that isn't published yet, but I've just been working on an article for CarBuzz about some Malaise era cars from the mid 70s there. So I'm a little fresher on my knowledge of that than I used to be, but and so I think we're kind of starting to see, and actually Jason Camisa did an interesting podcast about this, about how he said the Malaise era was actually good because of, it was a bad time for cars because they were really struggling, but it was a very important time for the car industry because it was like, okay, we're finally, getting in these catalytic converters. We're finally trying to improve this stuff and push them out of their comfort zone, which is again what we're seeing now. It's the same cycle of, okay, we had our horsepower wars in the 2010s, and the 2020s said, okay, we need to start moving the ball forward here. We need to start improving things, trying to eliminate smog, just like they did in the 70s. Now trying to move the ball down the field here. So it's like, yeah, the Malaise cars were terrible as far as reliability, quality, performance. I mean, basically everything, but those were the teething years they needed to get to the, slightly better stuff of the 80s, which incremental, but slightly better, I'd say. And then, into the 90s, obviously, and then just snowballing until we get to where we are today. But if we're talking, just cars from a fun and impressive and, whatever, kind of standpoint, I'd say 60s and 2010s are kind of neck and neck as far as legendary cars that came out that were really awesome, really fun, but also were cars that were limited to the era they were in, and it was a short-lived kind of fun that maybe arguably wasn't sustainable or just wasn't something that could last forever. And that's what makes the 60s the golden era of muscle. And I think same thing for 2010s. It couldn't last forever, and it's it was the golden era of the 21st century muscle stuff, I think. I think there's still many more golden eras to come with the wild stuff that we'll see, in the future too. And stuff that'll make, again, these 2010 cars look like antiques, like they already have, with, electric Charger versus the gas one, for example. But so I'd say, yeah, 60s, 2010s kind of neck and neck in my mind. And then 70s definitely just, because they all sucked, certainly last place there. I think 80s is second from last. There's some cool stuff in the 80s for sure, but second to last there. And then I think, yeah, just as time progressed, it was like, just this curve of like, okay, 60s were great. Sorry, I'm going the wrong way here. 60s were great. 70s sucked. 80s a little bit better. 90s a little bit better. 2000s a little bit better. 2010s better yet. And then 2020s, I think we've kind of leveled off because it kind of stayed, there wasn't really any improvements to Hellcats necessarily, in the first half of the 2020s here until they ended. There wasn't, we don't have any, like the Mustang, for example, S550, ushered in the second generation of the Coyote, but even, the first generation came in 2012, I believe it was, or maybe 2011. Yeah. but it was like, okay, we went from 300 horsepower to 400 horsepower, or 410 or whatever it ended up being. And then you had 420, and then it was incremental through the 2010s, and by the time you got the Bullet in 2019, you're at 480 horsepower. And then like now, like that's what a regular S650, now 7 years later from Bullet, which is crazy to think of. 7 years after, Dark Horse is another 20 horsepower, but it took you 7 years to go another 20 when you went through the 2010s, gaining 60, horsepower. So this is why I think kind of 2020 has been leveled off as far as gas stuff goes. But then you have, amazing stuff like Ioniq 5N and all the other crazy, electric stuff, which Tesla started in the 2010s, but, really seeing the expansion of that in the 2020s, I think is going to this is the malaise era 2.0 in many ways. And you're seeing gas, cars struggle with what do we do and how do we make this more efficient? Do we downsize? Is downsizing too much? Is there a better way? Kind of like the 70s again of like, oh, well, we just choke these engines and then they don't have smog anymore. It's like, yeah, and then you're doing, 70 horsepower out of a, giant 6-cylinder engine or whatever. And so it's like, okay, well, this is, the first reactionary step. Now, how do we improve this so that we can have our cake and eat it too? And that's, how you slowly got, with new technological advancements, better and better in the 80s and 90s. In the same way, battery stuff's following that same trend of like, oh, okay, we got 200 miles of range and, the cool, electric stuff right now. But then solid state comes in, another 5 years or so. And then, okay, well, now we got all the insane power and we got, the cheaper batteries. We have the, way better charging. And this, it's like, oh man, remember the days when you just sit around and charge them for 30 minutes? And now, I can pull down a full 100% charge in 5 minutes or in 3 minutes or whatever the case is. And that's absolutely like, again, China's already at 1 megawatt charging. China's already at 5-minute recharge, not on a widespread scale, but there's BYDs that do 1 megawatt charging if you can find the charger and all that. But that's all going to get more and more widespread. So I mean, like, China's already there. So it's showing like this is the way it's going to go. And so I think this is malaise 2.0, but that doesn't mean that everything right now sucks. I think cars are still fantastic, but companies are finding their way. Toyota's figuring out, okay, are people going to buy turbo 4-cylinder Toyotas? Does that make them nervous? Should we go back to naturally aspirated stuff? And I think, that's kind of where they're kind of finding their footing and saying, hey, well, let's just do hybrid instead. And this is why you see the explosion of the hybrid popularity. But some of these things need more power than what their hybrid systems currently do. But I think, again, all this stuff's going to keep advancing. But I think the 2020s are kind of the like, let's figure out this new step. It's kind of like the awkward teenager phase of, okay, like we had a really fun years before and we're kind of in the awkward, like, where do we go from here? But then we have, better times ahead for sure. It's just getting there and, putting one foot in front of the other until we are at that point, technologically, speaking, engineering wise, whatever, and so I think that's kind of how I've, kind of look at the decades of cars here since the 60s. So it's exciting. That's kind of, I think, why, I know it's an unpopular opinion, but I truly find the 2020s era cars to be kind of fascinating. Not because, again, we have a 1,000 horsepower Hellcat or something, because that's, it's not that kind of fascinating. It's just like, hey, like, how's everyone going to do this? What is going to be the future of performance electric stuff? What is going to be the right approach, for hybridization, for this, that, or the other, and, seeing that like Hyundai is the one who figured out like this is how you make an EV fun. And then everyone else now is like, oh crap, this is the way forward. Porsche is now giving all of the GT team rides in the Ioniq 5 and the Porsche bought. And they're like saying, this is like, they're on record saying, this is the way to do this, is the way Hyundai did it. Not Porsche being a leader, not Lamborghini being a leader. It's Hyundai. And like, that's the kind of crazy curveball stuff that to me is fascinating. As someone who's in this industry and many of you who follow it, it's like, it's, who would have expected that Hyundai, in the 80s, you'd say Hyundai is going to be the leader for enthusiast performance EVs in the 2020s. Like, what? So to me, like, that kind of stuff is fascinating. And so that's why I don't have the same gloomy outlook on the current car times like a lot of others do. To me, it's kind of this fun, like, what is this going to become? And it's like, seeing this kid grow up and seeing the amazing things they're going to do and where they go. And it's just, you can see the potential starting there, and you can see down the road and you can envision what it's going to become but it hasn't gotten there yet. But you're watching that transition. I think that's kind of, just to me, it's fun the way, at least in that mindset. But again, I know a lot of people feel differently. But anyway, man, I am just doing long answers tonight. I apologize, everyone. But let me see. B. Mitchell says he's never getting rid of his E9 coupe. That's awesome. I'm glad you got your cars. You stick to them. There's nothing like having cars you have your whole life. That's got to be amazing. I'm sure. I'm very jealous that I don't have that kind of real tight bonding with cars. And even like the Fiat, that little thing sits in the garage most of the time. And even that, I'm like, man, I wish I had more time to just drive my little Fiat around. 100 and I don't even know what it is, 163 pound-feet of torque, little tiny, Christmas ornament of a car. And even that, I'm just like, I still crave that bonding with a car. After, once the press car started, that went out the window pretty much. But anyway, yeah, so enjoy that, B. Mitchell, is what I'm getting at. And Darnell says, if I could junkyard swap something, an E30 with a 2.3 EcoBoost would be amazing. Yeah, that would be fun. That's a cool idea. And Chad says leather and chrome wrapped screens is what they hear from focus groups, I guess. Right. I mean, but it's so little leather and chrome too in those modern, luxury cars. And that's where I think there needs to be more for sure. So we'll see what they end up doing. And Mako says, I'd swap an E60 M5 with a dual clutch transmission. That would be a fun thing to do. And I think I just saw someone that did a build like that, where I think there's more and more people doing manual E60 M5s, which was a thing from the factory, very limited, but they did do it for America. But like more and more people, or maybe it was someone swapped a manual into the next generation. Well, I don't even remember what the number is for that, but the next generation M5, which I think also did have a very limited manual option, but people are putting manuals in more M5s is the bottom line. And it seems to be kind of, a growing interest and a growing industry, just like we're seeing the same thing from Ferraris. A lot of them people are trying to manual swap a lot of them because one, it's usually going to get more money at auction. And two, again, everyone's like, all right, well, if you want the fastest thing in a straight line, you go buy a Plaid or a Sapphire, and that pursuit is stupid now. So let's enjoy the experience. And let me see. Mr. 705 says, you can definitely see the change in attitude with the positive success with these new videos. It's great to see. We all want you to stick around. I really appreciate that. And it has been certainly uplifting. It's very cathartic to get a win every once in a while, and hopefully to get them more often, because it's hard to stay motivated without those successes. Obviously, again, I'm happy that they help everyone and that they're good sources of information or entertainment or whatever the case is. But it's terrible. I mean, but a lot of the self-esteem in that channel, and by extension in myself, really does still get tied up in views. And I wish that wasn't the case. That's something I'm absolutely working on, but so I guess this feeds into that in a non-healthy way, but I mean, just so that I can stick around. It's absolutely very great to see those videos succeeding, and keep our fingers crossed that continues to be the case. And let me see, Kraken saying, for real, what car reviewer sits down and dedicates 2 hours of his time to talk with his subscribers about cars? Who does it? I mean, it's true. No one else does. The live streams for others are very much more rare. And we do this twice a week too. We do the 1 hour one on Wednesdays. And and that's, and even just like the comments, I still stand by the fact I'm pretty confident I answer more comments than probably most car YouTubers. I don't want to say all of them, but probably more than most. And really, I think that's kind of one of the nice things about this channel not blowing up, as far as success, because that's one of the nice positives. Because there are some channels where there's just too much to comb through, and you just lose that connection to your audience. I mean, sure, you read some comments here and there, but you get the highlights. You don't actually see every comment. Versus me, I see every single comment, and I mean, I don't respond to every single one because a large majority don't require a response or need one, but whenever there is one where someone says, "Hey, thanks for this," or "I have a question about this," I love the fact that I am able to keep up with those. And so, yeah, I've always prided myself on really, making sure that it's always about you guys and trying to, be as available. And I mean, there's some people that even get weirded out when I respond, like people who aren't familiar with this channel. They're like, "What?" Like I asked the question, but I was expecting the community to respond, not for the person who posted the video to respond. And like it kind of catches some people off guard sometimes in a good way. But I just, yeah, I'm very thankful that I've been able to keep that going. And Lantern Tail says solid state batteries could also be what is needed for scooters and motorcycles, which most of the world uses. Absolutely. That is for sure huge. I mean, even like, yeah, the scooters and the motorcycles, but also like e-bikes. I mean, there's so many places where even just bicycles are very common. And to eventually, I mean, again, a lot of these places don't have power outlets in general. And, I mean, so there's limitations still, but if you can get some of this stuff electrified just to make their lives easier, it's not even about emissions or anything like that, but like, because obviously there's no emissions if it's just pedaling on a bike, but like, just to make people's lives a little bit better, it could be really cool. But especially scooters and motorcycles where you don't want to have that, super weighty thing. Solid state's going to be really exciting for sure. And Darnell says, I think the biggest challenge is not the tech for electric cars, but the energy consumption, data centers versus household charging, long commutes. Yeah. So that's going to be the other component. I mean, this is why they're firing up all these nuclear plants, because like they don't have a choice, especially with us killing our wind production, which I mean, again, really trying to not, go off the rails here, but like clearly we need every ounce of electricity generation we can muster. It doesn't matter if you like where it's coming from or not. Like, either that or the AI bubble needs to pop, one or the other, because it's either you got to drastically ramp up energy production, which means, really just embracing whatever you can to just get that going, even if especially mostly completed wind farms that are like there and 95% complete and already paid for. But anyway, these are things where, yeah, absolutely, that's going to be the biggest challenge is the electricity. You're right. You're absolutely right about that. So we'll see, yeah, how they manage that going forward. I really hope also solar improves, also along with everything else that improves, because I think that can take a lot of burden off the grid if solar gets cheaper and becomes more economical. Then I think that's very important and something that's probably not getting enough attention, in my opinion. Obviously, utility providers don't want to publicize that because they want to deliver all that to you, but I think, yeah, solar needs to certainly be more and more of a thing, because they're not going to be able to keep up. They're not going to, if AI keeps growing the way it is, they're not going to be able to keep up with energy demand, regardless of if we're all driving gas cars and using gas to power everything. It's still, the AI is just a complete energy sucker. It's crazy. One of the other reasons why I don't love it, but let me see. Yeah, big drain on the grid. Yeah, and yeah, and Dorian says AI will get priority over household charging is where I'm going. Electric car adoption will be tough if your bill is 2, 3, 4 times. Yeah, certainly. And so it's gonna be interesting to see. Yeah, I mean that could certainly swing the pendulum the other way if electric gets so expensive, especially for people who aren't running solar. It may end up being that's the premium and that's the thing that isn't a cost savings anymore. For sure, that there's a chance for that to happen. It just comes down to how they manage the energy rollout and what they do there. But certainly, and I mean that's why even we're keeping our options open, like in 2027. Maybe we do a plug-in hybrid instead or something like that. It also comes down to how much we drive and what our lives are like at that point. And that's why it's great to have companies like Toyota that are doing multiple solutions and fitting everyone's lives the best they can. And Jordan says, do you think Kia killed the Soul so the Kia EV2 and 3 could be introduced? I don't think so, because Soul had an electric version. There was a Soul EV, very rare. I think it went on sale in Korea, but here in the States, they even did a media drive for it. Like there's reviews out there for electric Souls, But then they strangely, I believe, I might be getting this slightly incorrect, but I'm pretty sure they killed it right before it actually went on sale. So I don't believe any. They had a first generation electric Soul that did actually sell, but for this the current or most recent generation of Soul, they had an electric one of that. But I think like they have like the whole press site had like pictures and like pricing and everything, and then at the last second I think they killed it. And this was again 7 or 8 years ago, I guess at this point. But like so they already had that, and if they wanted that, I think they could have stuck with that. And again, I think Korea did have it this whole time, but I don't know. To me, I think that it's just sold. I mean, it sold well in the end. So I really can't give you a good reason why they killed it, honestly. But I don't think they're envisioning EV2 and EV3 to be that good of a seller, just simply because it's gonna be more expensive. Even though they're affordable models. I mean, a Soul, you can pick up a pretty loaded Soul for like low 20s. I mean, and that's before any discounts. I mean, average transaction prices for those are probably under 20 grand. So I think that, if they were hoping to replace that, like that was kind of a pipe dream. But I think, yeah, I think it just probably wasn't worth sticking around for another generation. I think they're kicking themselves right now though, because Hyundai Venue just had a great year and it was up 21% over 2024, where it actually started to decline because it had been around for 5 years and it had no refresh. And so that's just the natural way that things go if you let something die on the vine. But then it picked up. Again, I think similar to how Versa, it had giant interest towards the end. Mirage did, all that kind of stuff. And so now Venue, since it's still around for a 2026 model year, that's now people are like, oh, this is the cheapest car in America now. Let's all run to that. And that's going to start to boost up. I mean, it's still not going to probably touch like Chevy Trax, which sold, 206,000 units last year. And the year before was 200,000 too. So it's not gonna be that good, but like I think maybe they just figured, okay, well, we can't beat Chevy Trax their own game, so you just give up. I don't know, but I mean, I still think there's a case for it for sure. But to me, I can't envision EV2 and EV3 being the reason why. But I don't know, maybe it is. And let me see. So Lantern says, what do you think about people justifying an EV purchase by saying that they save just a couple $100 in gas? Some people don't make any sense. Yeah, I mean, obviously, the amount of number crunching people do is, up to them as far as, I mean, car purchases are always an emotional purchase in general. There's some people where it is very cold, kind of, okay, let's make a spreadsheet and whatever wins out on the numbers is the one we'll go for. Some people do actually shop that way, but I think a lot of people, it's an emotional, some people it's even, oh, I saw this on the road, or I, walked into a dealer for whatever reason, or I had my car in for service and I walked into the showroom and I said, oh, this is really nice. I'll just trade it in and get this new one instead or whatever. There's a lot of people that do that. So some people, I mean, I've heard, especially with all the, justifications I've heard over the years from people, oh, I bought this because of this. And I'm like, okay. In my head, I'm like, I have so many follow-up questions to that, but I'm just going to leave it kind of thing. But, so yeah, I mean, certainly there's some people where, it's a razor thin justification. I mean, this has kind of been part of the struggle with plug-in hybrids. There's a giant price premium. And for a lot of them, even if you never actually use the gas engine and you're just always using that 30 or 40 mile range or whatever, and that's it still takes you, because that's not a lot of driving, so that's not a lot of gas saving. So like, it still takes you a long time to make back the money on a plug-in hybrid, which is, one of the biggest problems for them. So especially for those, and I've had, discussions with people who are like, why are you recommending this plug-in hybrid? Because, you never make your money back, blah, 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 whatever. Some of them you actually do. And if you do a ton of driving, it could eventually make sense. But I always say, like, it comes down to the person. Some people, they just like that experience. Like Beth, she's not driving an EV because she thinks she's saving the planet. She's driving it because it's the best driving experience for what she's looking for. She hates waiting for a transmission to downshift. She hates waiting for an engine to rev up. She wants that instant response. And that's the only thing that sold her on EVs. None of the other stuff, doesn't care about any of the other stuff. It's just, I want to put my foot down and have instant go. without any confusion. And so for it just yeah, everyone has the reasons, I guess, is the bottom line. Some people, if it makes them feel good to think they're saving a few $100s in gas and they're spending, 5 grand premium for the EV and they're never making that money back, um, it's one of those things that it doesn't make sense. But if it makes you happy, like anything, if it makes you happy, go for it, whatever the case, as long as it doesn't hurt someone else. To me, it's not something I bother, giving people a hard time for usually. And Jordan says, did you guys hear that Vince Zampella, video game developer behind Call of Duty, died in 2026 in a 2026 Ferrari 296 GTS crash? I did not hear that. That's terrible. That's crazy. Man, yeah, that's nuts. It's a shame. It must have just happened if it's a 2026 too. That's terrible. Call of Duty, man, I loved, especially the early ones. Such good games. Call of Duty 3 was kind of peak gaming for me as far as like how much time I spent playing video games before I just dove headfirst into working as much as possible to get the coolest car possible. But like, I remember Call of Duty 3, Capture the Flag. Any of you who also played back then, Capture the Flag and Call of Duty 3, I was I was like the sniper, and people hated me. But I always loved being the person that would like guard the flag and like just perch up in a spot and just snipe them out of nowhere. Man, yeah, I had so much fun playing Call of Duty 3 as my favorite one. I have the World War II, the newer World War II one for Xbox One. I just never had the time to sit down and play it. But I do have it, and I'm hoping to someday play that one. But rest in peace to Vince there. That's a shame. And let me see. Michelle says, hello, my spot was a Rolls-Royce Cullinan. That's awesome. And thanks for stopping by, Michelle. Hope you're doing well. And Andrew's asking, is the Hybrid Max worth it for the powertrain? I actually just discussed this a little bit in my brand new Grand Highlander hybrid review that I just posted yesterday. And I also have a week with the Hybrid Max where I talk about it there. I also, in my initial review of Grand Highlander, if you go back a couple of years to watch that one, I drove them all back to back. So I drove gas, and then I went straight into the hybrid, then I went straight into the Hybrid Max, and back to back to back really gave you really good impressions on how they feel just a few minutes apart from each other. And it comes down to everyone's preference. If you've got the money to burn and you like power, sure, Hybrid Max is worth it. If you are a regular family hauler kind of person, you don't give a crap about how fast your car is, no, just go for the regular hybrid. It entirely comes down to what your priorities are, in my opinion. And Michelle says, like the Grand Highlander review, still a strong one in the segment. Same with the TX on the luxury side. Regular one has its place, but it needs a better design to improve interior space. Yeah, I agree about the regular Highlander for sure. And I'm glad you liked the review. Thanks for watching it. And Ahmed says, I've driven and enjoyed the Mustang EcoBoost. Since you've owned both, how much more fun is the GT? Is it worth it given the extra costs, insurance? I'm 19, gas price, etc. Or is the EcoBoost enough? I have sat in a GT, or I haven't sat in a GT, so I don't know the difference. That's a good question. This also comes down to what your preferences and priorities are. So if you are, if you're, I mean, I guess it comes down to, are you happy with your EcoBoost? If it is enough power, don't fall for the grass is always greener trap. If you are happy with what you have, stick with what you have. There's pros and cons. EcoBoost, I mean, I know, from the first day I drove my GT after, trading in the EcoBoost, I was like, wow, this definitely feels heavier. And, that nose, you can feel that heavier nose going. The first time I went around a tighter corner in the GT, I was like, oh, this is not the EcoBoost, that's for sure. So handling is certainly, in my opinion, a step backwards. Just from that lighter nose in the EcoBoost is really great. Now, obviously, the fun of the GT, I think the engine has far more character. I think it's slightly more reliable, in my opinion, as well. Actually, probably more than slightly. I think it's a good bit more reliable, so that's certainly nice. But yeah, you take the big, hit as far as gas. Excuse me. I will also say, though, as far as gas goes, it depends on the kind of driving you're doing. If you're doing around town driving, yeah, I think EcoBoost is going to really help you a lot more there. the GT gearing, especially 18 and up, is so tall. I mean, my Bullet, I was getting 30 mpg on the highway pretty much if I was, going around the speed limit and sixth gear just cruising, especially with cruise control on. I could get 30 in the Bullet, 480 horsepower, 5-liter V8. So if you're just doing a lot of highway cruising, you might not actually get that much of a downgrade with GT from a gas kind of standpoint. Insurance, you probably will see, a step up. You're definitely going to get an insurance quote and see what the real price difference is there if you haven't already. But yeah, I think EcoBoost is really fun. But obviously, I put my money where my mouth is. I mean, the GT is what I always wanted. I mean, I've always, loved the V8s and stuff. So if you don't have that same love, and again, you're happy, then, don't switch, but yeah, GT to me is the one that I would rather own for sure. And especially these days, I don't know what year EcoBoost you have, but now, like, if you want a manual, you have to go GT, with any of them since 2024. So like, or maybe it's, was it 2024? They went all automatic for the EcoBoost. But so like now, like, it's GT or bust for me because I still do not like the automatic in the Mustang. So for me, it's just for that reason alone, it's got to be GT to get the manual. But again, if that doesn't bother you and you're fine with the automatic and the EcoBoost, then, again, don't bother, shopping around and just enjoy what you got. And Jordan says, we've never leased a vehicle before. How does that work towards the end? Do they give you the option to buy? Any factors of consistent lease payments? So yeah, lease end, it's kind of like a rental car turn-in kind of thing. They just check it for, any issues where you have to, pay extra if you go over on mileage, or if you have dings that are larger than the size of a credit card is typically what they go with, and things like that. But yeah, they always give you, every lease contract has an option to buy, and it tells you in the contract when you're signing it, 3 years prior or whatever the case is, like, here is what your option is going to be to buy this at the end. So that the whole time. And so, yeah, and a lot of them you can pull forward. They'll let you get out of the lease a few months early, especially if you're sticking with the same brand. So there's some flexibility there. And also leases, you can still get out of them in most cases. There's either like lease transfers, and there's other ways you can kind of go about it. But typically, if you're not going to do anything, out of the ordinary, it's just, we did it with all of Beth's cars because she leased her Mercedes, where, you just drop it off at the dealer, you put the keys on their desk, and, you do all the forms and all that, and they do the little inspection, which oftentimes they do a few weeks ahead of time with someone who comes out and actually inspects it. They inspect it as long as everything's good, or you've settled everything needs to be settled. You drop it off like you're dropping it off for service, and you say goodbye, and you never see it again in most cases. So that's typically the way it works. But there's a buyout option. Like, that's why the Cadillac's just really high. Fiat, though, I already know, like, to buy out the Fiat, I mean, that's a long lease. I did on that on purpose. That's a 42-month lease on that one. So that's not going to be done until, what was that going to be? Like, mid 2028 for that one. So for that, summer of 2028, they're saying the residual is gonna be like 16 grand and change for that car. And already, I mean, with how car prices are, ballooning, and the fact that I really like it, if I can't afford something nicer, like, hands down, that's gonna be the best car to buy for 16 grand for me, because it's probably gonna only have like 5,000 miles on it. I mean, the first almost full year, I'm 11 months of ownership now. I've put 1,250 miles on it. It's a 5,000 mile a year lease, and I'm not even doing, I'm doing a fraction of that. So, like, realistically, it'll be a 5,000 mile, 3.5-year-old Fiat 500e for 16 grand. To me, that sounds like a pretty good buy. I mean, maybe they'll plummet in value and it'll only be a 10 grand car and I'll walk away from it, or I'll tell Fiat, hey, I'll give you 10 grand for it, or whatever the case is. Who knows what I'll do? Maybe I'll walk away from it and just go back to not having a car at all. I don't know. But yeah, so they always have that in the contract, what you can buy it off for. And Lantern Tail says, since Forza Horizon 6 is set in Japan, Toyota could trade an MR2 or put their supercar as the cover car for the game. Yeah, that'd be cool. I'm curious to see what they do for the cover car. And I'm so excited for that game. Again, I'll probably play it in like 2030, but like, I'm so excited for that game this year for everyone else. And Yeah, it's gonna be a cool one, I'm sure. And that one other guy says Impreza STI would no longer sell at the prices they needed here. Crosstrek STI, I bet it would. You're right. Even yeah, Turbo Crosstrek, I think would sell. I think you know the it'd be interesting to see how the Uncharted does because that's it's not quite as much ground clearance and it's electric, so you're gonna leave some people behind with that one, but that is essentially cross trek sized, and it's got what does it have, 300 or what is it, 300 and something horsepower. I mean, it's stupid fast, I'm sure. I haven't driven it yet, but I'm sure it's going to be insanely fast, for those people who want a fast Subaru in that size. So I think that's going to kind of scratch that itch for some people, but obviously, again, it's not a manual, it's not a gas thing. So I think there's absolutely a market for a Crosstrek WRX, and I think starting there would be amazing and something that would be finally listening to the decade of feedback. And people have been saying this ever since Crosstrek became a thing, but yeah, maybe someday Subaru will come to their senses. And Raphael says, for me, if I can't change it, I can make my life happier by not diving into it. Right. That's a good way to look at it. Let me see. And Chad says, news becoming entertainment is a problem. Absolutely. Yeah. And Chad also says, Hyundai Veloster ended up being very reliable for my friend. Bought it used, almost 200,000 miles and running perfectly. That's awesome. I'm glad they got a good one used, because it's always kind of a roll of the dice with how maintenance was, unless you got a real good maintenance record or where it came from. But that's great. And I think that shows the potential of these cars if they are properly maintained, which I think is still the key component that doesn't get enough attention. Is like a lot of these cars that fail, they're not going to people that are, I think Mitsubishi's another one that's the same kind of thing. They attract buyers who oftentimes don't have great credit. They're going to be the first people to skip an oil change. They're going to be the first people to say, I don't need that service. I don't need this. And this is why, I think Mitsubishi it's at least as reliable as Nissan. I think it has the potential to be very, very good. But then, you're selling to people who skipped oil changes, and Nissan's another one. It's a lot of these car companies, unless you're buying a Honda or a Toyota, where people are buying them that are typically people that really care about their cars and, are buying with the mentality of this is going to last me forever. If you're not going into it with that mentality, it's a disposable car, or it's just, the next lifeboat to get you from here to there until you can hopefully get something better, or whatever the case is, or before you walk away from the delinquent loan, or whatever the case ends up being. It's not a good recipe for something that's going to last forever, So, I still think that's, and I've told Kia this, and I've talked to executives and people about this. I mean, it's a terrible thing. I don't know what the solution is really, aside from just making them too expensive or not selling to those, those lower cost kind of buyers. But then you kill your volume. So it's like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place there. And I think, the warranties really go a long way to kind of, reassuring people that these are quality cars. But for some people, it's still not enough, because again, they see, the person who didn't do an oil change ever in their life, blow their motor in their Sonata at 60,000 miles. And it's like, well, that would be anything if you didn't do an oil change on it, or whatever the case is, I mean, I saw a bunch of this stuff even working at the BMW, Audi, Porsche dealer. The amount of people that even, on a lease turn in, 3 years and the oil is like molasses because they never did an oil change. Because it is a disposable car. They don't care. They don't want to, go to a service department. It's just, or whatever. For them, it's not even a money thing. For these, luxury buyers, it's just, I don't care, and they just trash them. I mean, the amount of cars I've seen that the back seats like a garbage can. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of that stuff, which I think explains a lot of the reliability issues that some people see. I mean, there's still some validity to some of those complaints and claims, but a lot of it, I think, is also stuff that doesn't get a lot of proper context, around it. Anyway, we're almost out of time here, so I'll try and catch up here at the end. And also, sorry I missed the other super chats here. So I'll get to those quickly, and then we'll do speed round here for the rest of the questions and sign off here. But Chad, thank you for a super chat. He says, we grew up with AOL CDs. I assume tech will fail. Yeah, I think that's true. We've all kind of, a lot of us at least, yeah, grew up in that same era where, yeah, we are yeah, conditioned to be ready for that when it comes to Bluetooth and things like that. And Jordan, thank you for a super chat. He says, sorry, Matt, but Venezuela for oil, ICE cars, and Greenland minerals for EV cars, possibly to appease both U.S. consumers. Well, I don't condone imperialism for sure, but Venezuela also has a lot of other minerals. They're actually, I think, I can't remember. I think that I don't know if it's lithium, but China buys a ton of minerals from Venezuela already. So I think Venezuela is not just oil, because the thing that I actually just learned recently is a lot of the oil in Venezuela supposedly isn't the type that's great for gasoline. It's great for diesel and for other uses, but it's not great for gas. This is actually why a lot of these oil executives came in here on Friday and talked about this Venezuela stuff, and like they didn't really commit. I think Chevron might be excited because they already have stuff, but all these other companies pulled out and they're like, well, we don't. It's the same as the car companies. We don't want to invest hundreds of millions of dollars into something, and then the next president come in 3 years and say, oh, you can't do that. Like, we're getting out of Venezuela or whatever the case is. And then you don't. It's the same as cars. We can't say, oh, we're going to just throw a V8 in everything and then have the rug get pulled out. You can't. You don't make long-term investments based on a policy of a 4-year president, or even an 8-year potential. I mean, these are things that have to make sense outside of politics, outside of, there's always a little bit of politics involved, but like, you can't just build a factory to make a president happy. You can't just, drill in another country and set up this giant, enterprise that you don't already have running just, because again, by the time you get that stuff actually up and producing, it's that person's going to be long gone. And then, then you're stuck holding the bag. And so that's why it's definitely not as clear cut there for sure. But so no, I think that we can figure out the energy stuff without pillaging Venezuela or Greenland or any other place for that matter. We need to figure this out on our own, and that was the whole goal of ramping up the green stuff and building these wind farms and doing more solar analysis to be energy independent in our own country. That was the goal, which I thought was kind of a unanimous agreement that like, hey, we should be able to like do our own stuff. And now we're going back to trying to be dependent on everybody else for our energy needs. Like, that's not good for national security and stuff. If we have to be dependent on shipping stuff from everywhere else, or I'm not dependent, but if we're using that as a source to bolster stuff, like, we need to be able to do this ourselves. And we had a plan to do that. And regardless of how attainable or not, maybe that seemed to some people, like that was the goal. And I think that was a good goal. And now we're just going back to same as, it's the same Stellantis move of, oh no, let's go back to the safe, easy thing, and hope that, we don't get the rug pulled out from under us. And it's like, you're going to, it's very certain that, at some point you're going to get that rug pulled out from under you. So you gotta, make sure you can stand on your own 2 feet. But anyway, all right, let's do speed round here. Where are we here? So, Darnell says, what would you guys get in a year once Cadillac is gone? Are you both set on electric cars? Yeah, Beth, it's definitely EV for her. Me, again, I got some time on mine. So, but as far as Beth, we'll have to see the options that are out there. Things are coming out all the time. And we'll see what pricing ends up being like for used stuff and for new stuff. But yeah, it's safe to say, again, unless electricity gets insanely expensive that we can't, afford to fuel up, or it's way more expensive than gas, then that would be the case where we'd maybe go backwards. But otherwise, no, we're absolutely going to stick to the EVs as far as her stuff goes. Now, I still have a GR Corolla after the Fiat 500 if, finance is allowed. But I had to get at least one mention. And we went 2 hours without saying GR Corolla. I'm very proud of myself. But I blew it at the end here. That would be the way I would go. But yeah, we'll see about Beth, depending on what things come out. And Lancewell says, good evening, and sorry he's late. Sorry I'm so late with getting to the non-super chat there, Lancewell. And Philip says, went to a dealer once and they would not give me the out the door price. After a couple of hours I walked, they acted like they didn't know what price they wanted to sell it at. That's strange. Wow, I haven't seen that before. And Chad says seeing the Rolex vid with a Honda Accord from New Orleans was very cool. You're so far from us here in Florida, but NOLA is only 2 hours away. Yeah, I actually did that road trip once with a buddy. We rode in his R56 Mini Cooper S from Pensacola, where he was stationed with the Navy, to New Orleans, and that was a fun little road trip. And let me see. Jordan says Ford is still diving into hybrid tech. Does that make the past C-Max Fusion hybrid tech obsolete? What do owners of those vehicles do? Optional upgrades or SOL? So as far as, I mean, yeah, Ford's doing more hybrid stuff. Obviously, like anything, old tech is, it's old tech, and there's no way to keep that stuff modern. It's always, there's going to be advancements with every powertrain, so I think, yeah, there's no solution there aside from, obviously they're still going to support those vehicles and, make replacement parts, I'm pretty sure, and stuff. But yeah, it's just go for the new stuff. But it shows how those were kind of ahead of their time, that, they were on the right track with Fusion Hybrid and C-Max, and they should have kept going with that. And they didn't, and hindsight's 2020, but I'm sure right now they're kicking themselves. They don't have a C-Max and a Fusion Hybrid to sell. Maybe they're not, I don't know. They're all excited about, just truck everything these days, but I'm sure someone in Ford wishes they had that stuff still. And Nico says John Cena trade the Type R for a Prelude. Definitely not a car guy. Yeah, I don't know if he did or not, but I don't want to, again, disparage, because I'm not a fan of gatekeeping what isn't a car guy. To me, if it makes you happy and you actually give a crap about your car and it's not an appliance, like, you qualify as a car person to me, because you care about it, and I think the second you start gatekeeping and you start, turning your nose up to people because it's not the kind of car that you would do or the move you would make, to me, that's exclusionary. And I don't, this hobby doesn't need less people in it. I think, being welcoming, being patient of, the stance people, or, whatever, you like to point a finger at and say, I wouldn't do that. And it's like, yeah, but, they care about their car. And at the end of the day, that's what can all unite us, is this thing isn't just, a rolling appliance that gets you from point A to point B. It's more than that. And the second that you get that, and that there's an emotional connection, and it's not just a hunk of metal, that's where you kind of cross over to me. And to me, you do, if you want to have that title, you are a car person, at that point. Anyone that can get excited about it, even if they're excited about their, Honda Odyssey, that's great. And that's awesome. And if you're into that, you're a car person. Same thing, people that are really into their Teslas, people really wanted to say, oh, EVs aren't real car people, or Tesla drivers aren't real car people. It's like, they're excited about their cars. If they're excited about their cars, they're a car person, in my opinion. It's not the same thing I would do, but that doesn't mean that, I would exclude them, personally. So I try to avoid, those kinds of things. So if John Cena, if it makes him happy, if he actually did trade it in, he's excited about his car and it's more than transportation. To me, he's still a car guy, but we can agree to disagree there. And Raphael says he can afford to buy it just because he likes the looks. Absolutely. And yeah, we talked about KS Basis bringing up, the Prelude there. And so that worked out with me stumbling upon that even without seeing the question. And Darnell also says the Prelude's fine. Take a Civic Hybrid, add better steering and brakes, make it 2-door. It's a good car for a hairdresser, young professional person. Yeah, or even just someone who wants something cool that's good on gas. Yeah, and I think it's great, and there's certainly people out there like that. So I think it makes sense. It just needs to be priced right. That's always been my holdup. Nothing wrong with it otherwise. And Joey says, here to say kudos. Unfortunately, on the right read regarding a lack of new STI, Matt, boo, Subaru. Right, yeah. Cheers to Matt and boo to Subaru. Right, yeah. And we covered that already, so I'm sure that's already, you probably saw my response to, that whole rant that I did correctly call. And Lance West says Timeless also has the voice actor for Anakin Skywalker from the Clone Wars. Interesting. I didn't know that tie-in. I'm not into Star Wars. No reason. It's not like I hate it or anything, but just was never able to get hooked on that like everyone else has. But that's cool. That's awesome. And Nico says time travel. I'm sorry, we're like an hour behind with our discussion here. But Nico says time travel boggles my mind. You time travel in your birthday suit, or is everything you're touching? Can I time travel back to the 1800s if I'm in a Mustang? Right. And there's all the paradoxes and the problems of, if you kill your dad, then you don't exist, those kinds of things. So it's, yeah, there's lots to it. I won't go into my theories on time travel because we don't have enough time. And even if we had just started off the live stream with that, we probably wouldn't have enough time to dive into all. But I think that there is potential workarounds for that. But yeah, I won't I won't go into that. Nico says unrelated, but I am done with Wordle. The most recent words have been oomph and quark. Interesting. I know that's a big. Everyone's really into that, or was. I don't know if they still are, but I've never gone into that either. Also, Lantern Tail says I'm getting into shows as well. I'm a huge anime fan and have Crunchyroll, best $8 a month I have ever spent. I don't even know what that is. I guess that's maybe like, is it like Netflix for anime or something? That's cool. Yeah, I just so out of the loop with so much of that stuff. And Lancelot says quark is a subatomic particle. Interesting. I never knew what that was. I learned something new tonight. Thank you. And Mitchell says not having Bluetooth won't make you a pedestrian. Absolutely. Lantern Tail says, I think because technology has made life so easy, people can't tolerate it when anything fails anymore. It's kind of sad. You're absolutely right. I mean, you see all the stuff where, the internet goes down and the amount of stuff in the world that just gets brought to its knees is just, yeah, it's not great. We're very dependent on a lot of very fragile stuff. But yeah, it's a lot of people just can't handle any upsets anymore. And Lancelot says, yeah, okay, we covered that. Lantern Tail says, I like watching anime rom-coms, overpowered MC, and even comedy. Konosuba is hilarious. Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to see if I ever have the time to get into anime stuff. I've always wanted to watch Initial D and just never had time. That'd be where I would start for sure, and then work out from there. But Old Chrysler says, hey, Matt, I hope you're well. You told me to let you know when the YouTube is live and ready for your support, and it finally is. I have my first vid about the camera transmission lawsuit. Thanks so much. That's awesome. I'll have to check it out. And yeah, thanks for letting me know. So is it just your username? Should I just go to the Old Chrysler? Is that where I can find the channel? If not, feel free to drop a link or a shout out there for yourself. Happy to check that out. And good luck with the channel. Hope it goes well. And Michelle says big chunk of the delivered deals are Toyota deals, as they're the toughest to negotiate due to their high demand. Okay, so that could make sense. Yeah, if it's basically like you're not going to get a discount on a Toyota half the time, and you can get one, and even if some of that goes to them, if you're at least coming out ahead, that makes sense. Okay, interesting. Lancelot says I'm the goat as well, and I appreciate that. Thanks for the support, Lancelot. And Chad says in NOLA there's a place with movie props, including cars and planes. We've seen it from the interstate a few times, but plan on visiting next time. Interesting. Yeah, I didn't know they had a place. I'll have to check that out next time I'm there. And Lantern Tail says, what happened to the Automotive Video Association? Yeah, it's been kind of put on the back burner. But yeah, the AVAs, as we called them, we did a lot of collaborating. And it was really fun to do. I think there's interest to, do that again in the future. It's just trying to, again, one, have it kind of make sense for everyone involved, which gets kind of harder as time goes on. And also just how do we make that worthwhile? But yeah, there's still interest in doing that. We might, get the band back together for that here in the future, because I love it, because a lot of people have said, oh, you should do more collabs, and it's like I did a ton of collabs. I have a video of me and Engineering Explained driving around in a Elantra N and a Miata and saying which is the more fun car, and did a lot of fun little collabs, and so hoping to do more of that here in the future, but we'll see when those come back, if they ever do. And I see Jordan had another super chat here at the end. We'll do that as we wrap up. I'm just going to try and get through the last few questions here, and we will head on out. So B Mitchell says, I can fully vouch for the S550 for being a road trip warrior. I typically do 400 to 600 mile road trips each way, currently parked for salt season with 84,000 blissful miles. I'm glad you're enjoying yours as a road trip or two. That's awesome. And Felix says, hi, Matt, with the RAV4s now either hybrid or plug-in hybrid, is there a concern that they're now less capable off-road or in snow due to there not being a mechanical all-wheel drive system? In snow, it's not really as big of an issue as other companies kind of try and make it out to be. I mean, I drove them in snow. We did whenever they launched the all-wheel drive system, we drove it in Avalon, we drove it in Camry, and then we drove it in, yeah, I guess it was RAV4 maybe. I don't know, but like it was mostly Camry and Avalon for that trip. That was I think that was 2020. That was one of the last trips right before everything shut down. And yeah, they engineered that system to be infinitely powered. So that gas engine is capable of keeping those rear wheels going until you run out of gas. It is completely capable of doing that. And, I think for a lot of people, I mean, yeah, there's absolutely limitations. And there's certain instances where, yes, and I've said this, if, you watch, all my reviews of all this stuff, including the new RAV4 and its competitors like the Forester and the CRV that, have that mechanical all-wheel drive, I've said, like, if you're going to be driving through foots of snow, for long periods of time, and you really need to have 50-50 power split, yeah, the Toyotas are not going to be for you. But I think, Toyota's a realist with a lot of this stuff. I think that's a very pragmatic approach as far as how they're rolling out electrification, how they're doing all this stuff. And the same thing goes for all-wheel drive. They know their buyers, and they know that the people that are in snow country in Vermont and Colorado, they're buying Subarus, and they're not going to probably change, and so instead of trying to pursue those people, they say, okay, where do we actually sell these things? What do those people actually use them for? And obviously, again, it can't be everything to everyone, but saying, okay, what is the largest group? How can we optimize it for them? And that is, okay, you might have a few inches of snow you need to worry about occasionally, or you need to get started on an off-road trail or something like that. That rear, it's just about that initial start, getting out of the ditch, getting out of the, the muddy grass you're in, or whatever the case is. And like the Toyota system, you don't need 50-50 split for that. You're going to have enough there to, get you unstuck. And I think that's kind of, the most important thing. Yeah, sure, you can't do the Rubicon Trail in the RAV4, but you can't do it in really any of the other competitors. Maybe Forester Wilderness, but like, it's, I think the RAV4 does it the right way for their buyers, and for the majority of people who say they need all-wheel drive, they don't really need a 50-50 split. And the people who do, their Toyota has, all the other options, of course. You go buy a 4Runner. If I was in Vermont and I was, dealing with a foot of snow every day, yeah, you're not buying a RAV4, you're buying a 4Runner. So I think, they've got all their bases covered. So that also gives them the luxury of saying, okay, we can have something that's a little less, full-hearted. But I don't think they're losing that many people, because I don't think people that were serious about off-roading or deep snow driving or anything, I don't know if RAV4 was always their first pick anyway, because it's down on ground clearance compared to, like, they're going and buying a Forester or an Outback, or they're going and buying a 4Runner. They're buying other things. Sure, there's some, and it's a crossover still, but like, RAV4 was never the off-roading warrior, the snow warrior necessarily. You can build them to do better, but like, I think that they've done that right, is the bottom line. So I don't think they're gonna worry. Sure, they'll lose a few people for sure, but not enough to make them, be upset about. I think it'll be fine for them. And I see Adam agrees about Voyagers, so I'll have to check that out for sure. And also he says, Matt, you rock. Have a great night. Headed to bed, but really appreciate your live chats. The tangents are the best part. I'm glad you say that, because I honestly think, hopefully some of you agree. To me, I always feel bad going on tangents, because I know, again, it means that probably Adam's not even here to watch anymore, because he probably signed off 30 minutes ago or whatever. But I don't want to ever just ramble if you guys aren't into it. So definitely, again, let me know, even with the little emojis or whatever. Give me thumbs down if I'm going too long on a tangent and you're tired of it. I will not take offense. Again, I'm here for you guys, not to, hear myself talk, even though I'm the only one talking, I know. If there was an easier way to do this, where everyone could actually be in a live chat, we could all actually have our voices literally heard, I would be down for that, but it would be probably kind of chaotic without a moderator or something. But I'm trying to focus on answering questions and chatting with you guys and interacting, and not just me regaling on tales of the past and stuff again, unless it's something you guys actually enjoy. But let me see. Lantern Tale says within the time frame of this stream, the Z video is at 48,000 views. That's awesome. Yeah, it keeps on. It slowed down for sure today, but it was cruising. I was impressed. It kind of got a second wind. I thought, okay, it's gonna get the first bump and it'll get a 10,000 views or something. But then it's like it like found a new audience and YouTube pushed it to a whole new group, and then it just yesterday took off again. It's kind of funny how the algorithm works. The junkyard video too, the one I just posted this past week, had this little bump and that kind of fizzled. I'm like, oh, all right, well, that's probably not going to do great. And then some reason it just ended up on the YouTube homepage for some people, and then boom, like got another 1,000 views in like a day or something. Again, not like viral or anything, but it's like it's so funny how it's truly at the mercy of the algorithm. If YouTube decides it wants to go on the homepage, I mean, if YouTube just, yeah, I mean, I could be a millionaire overnight if they just, push stuff enough. But you never know. You never know. It's just, it's so funny. Anyway, so Lance West says, I've heard of people converting the SMG and BMWs to manuals. Yeah, that must be what I was talking about earlier. And Chaz says, bring back random convertible and coupe models for cars. Yeah, that would be fun. And Chaz says he always hated the sniper in Call of Duty. I'm sorry. Yeah, I would have been the person you would have loved to probably reach through the screen and punch. And I don't blame you, but man, it was satisfying to guard that flag and have really good shots. And also Lantern Tale says Black Ops 2 is also legendary. Yeah, I was out of gaming at that point, so I never got into the newer ones. I also I love the historical stuff, again, going back to the time travel and all those types of things. So for me, I don't like too many games that are set in present time unless it's car games. But for the RPGs and stuff like that, for me, it's always the historical stuff was kind of fun to be out of reality in a way, and experience something I couldn't experience otherwise. I guess, it's not like you're a black op, but it's just, something that's a different time period, just more exciting to me personally. But anyway, Car Story, thanks for saying hi. And Lantern says phone contracts are also like leases. You pay off the phone and you have the option to buy the phone or trade it in at the new phone. Yeah, same kind of deal. And Decepticon, thanks for stopping by here towards the end. And Chad, thanks for the love too. And Double A, thanks for Happy New Year. Hope you're having a good New Year here, all things considered. And I appreciate that they were reminders to wrap up there. And Jordan says, has an oil company ever partnered with a vehicle company to produce a vehicle, current or past? I don't know the answer to that. There might be. I know obviously there's partnerships for sure. Like you'll see on I think Ferraris have a Shell, they're partnered up, which is how I got to, Maranello in 2024 with Shell, was because of, their partnership with Ferrari. And, I think, a few other companies where, you'll see on the airbox, there's a sticker, we recommend, this oil brand or whatever the case is. So there's some of that for sure. But I don't know about producing an actual car. There's probably something out there, and maybe B. Mitchell or someone knows a better answer to that, but I don't know personally. And everyone's taking the opportunity to drink for the Gio Corolla mentioned there. And Jordan says, thoughts on the Tokyo Auto Salon Nissan Aura Nismo concept. Yeah, it looks cool. We don't get it here in the States. But Nismo, all the things, which is kind of sounds like Nissan's going to be doing, sounds good to me, as long as they're actually, a performance upgrade in some form, even if it's just handling, as long as it's not just badges and stickers and, aero kits, I can be on board with Nismo, all the things, even if it's something I think is goofy. I think Armada Nismo is ridiculous, not in a flattering way, really. It's just why? But it's, I'm not mad about it. For the 5 people that buy it, it's going to be really fun, I'm sure. But anyway, so, and Jordan's saying thanks for the live, and from Chad and Jordan Yeager. Yeah, I will remember that for the future. Thank you, Jordan. And I'm glad you guys enjoyed the chat here tonight. And David says, yes, the anime streaming service for the Crunchyroll there. And Jordan, thank you so much for 2 super chats here to end out the evening here. He says, for any of us that have experienced deja vu, we've time traveled and are continuing time travel. Deja vu physically feels weird and uncomfortable. Yeah, I have some fun ideas about deja vu as well. Again, I could go off the rails for sure, and I won't. But yeah, I think there's something to deja vu. I've heard the scientific explanation of, why they think it happens, and it's not like some, out of the ordinary kind of thing, but I think there's something there. I don't know. It's kind of fun to think about, but yeah, I'm glad you kind of appreciate the deja vu, fantasizing or theorizing as well. And also, he says, does the hype YouTube button benefit you? It doesn't seem like it has that much benefit. And I've seen from other, like even YouTube advice channels and stuff, it doesn't seem like hype helps that much, because the problem with the hype is that no one sees the stuff that gets hyped and sees the hype leaderboard for that unless you go to YouTube and go to the hype page, which is buried and not prominently featured anyway. So for the average person that just clicks their YouTube app, says, "Oh, okay, I'll watch the first thing on the homepage or the second or third thing after I scroll for 2 seconds," they're never going to see that. So it's a nice idea in theory. Now, for the few people who do use the hype page, sure, maybe it picks up, a viewer here or there. So, I mean, I don't think it hurts. If you have stuff that's more worthy of your hype points and other videos you're actually genuinely more excited about, hype those ones instead for sure. But I will certainly not say no to any hype. It certainly, I think, helps, especially for the Relics channel. It helps more there because they put a multiplier on hype based on how many subscribers you have. So the cap is 500,000 subscribers. So I'm pretty close to that cap. So it's going to take a lot of hype to get one of these videos on the leaderboard. I mean, obviously there's a lot more of you than there are on the Junkyard channel. But it's going to take a lot of hype to rank these videos. But the Relic stuff, since I have such a small amount of subscribers on there, if a lot of you hype that could actually kind of move the needle a little bit potentially on that. And it's a new channel. So there's less potential for people to be like, "Oh, I've already seen that guy," or whatever. I don't need to, watch his stuff again or whatever. The Relics is kind of a fresh thing. It's kind of a little bit out of the ordinary. I mean, there's others that do that same kind of thing, but it's not quite as common as car reviews. So I think that's really, if you only have certain amount of hype points to spend each week, I mean, do whatever you want. But I think the Relics would be where it would, help a lot more. And certainly doesn't hurt either way. And I appreciate anyone who wants to do that. It's very kind of you. So, and it's also, free. So it's a nice way too of supporting, if you don't want to be a member or whatever, to kind of do something that doesn't cost extra. But honestly, at the end of the day, still the best way to help the channel is to just watch the video till the end or leave it playing and, do something else. But, just having that video play through to the end is the best thing for the algorithm still. That's what they want. They want you to be on YouTube as long as possible. And I don't support that from a mental health standpoint, but as far as algorithm, if you want to help the channel, that's the way to do things to help the most. But anyway, Jordan, also thank you so much for giving a membership here at the end. I really appreciate that. And all right, I think we're just about caught up. I think Jordan saying a blip in time when something seems familiar, even though it's the first time you experience something. Yeah, there's something to it, I think. And Theodore says, "Never give up, my brother. You're the best, heartwarming, funny, but honest. Is the best thing you have." I appreciate that. Thanks so much for the kind words. I'm glad so many of you enjoy the videos. And Adventure Auto says, "I finally caught one of your live streams live. I've been watching your vids for as long as I can remember. I'm also a big car guy who now only drives EVs. It's just hard to beat them." I agree. In many cases, it absolutely is. And thanks so much for watching all these years. I really appreciate that. And I hear that fairly often, and that on its own is just mind blowing to me that there's so many of you that we've all kind of grown up together. We've kind of progressed through our car preferences together, and it's kind of fun. And so thanks so much for catching the live here. And sorry, even this it probably took a while to get an answer or a response there, but thank you so much for chiming in and hopping on here. And let me see. Jordan says, he's still convinced that the water-powered vehicles, non-hydrogen, are the future. Hoping for a Stanley Meyer doc biopic. We'll see if that continues to get any more popular. I still be convinced if that was possible. I mean, especially again, we need energy and cheap energy more than ever. And I think engineers and politicians and everyone is trying to use the cheapest stuff possible and the most energy possible. And I think if something like that was viable, I think they probably would have dropped the whole like, oh, we can't have free energy for the whole world. Like I think it'd be like, well, we need this. And if they haven't gotten to that point yet, they will get to that point with these AI data centers and stuff, and the crypto demands and stuff. So I think if there were a hand to be played there, their hand would have been forced by now or very soon from now. So I don't think that has the promise personally, but science is awesome. Engineers are amazing people, and who knows what the future holds. We'll have to see. But Thanks so much, guys. And yeah, so I think we have actually caught up here. So thank you all so much. We went almost a full half hour over. I'm happy to see that some of you have stuck around here to the end. So thank you so much. Hope you guys have a great week. Stay tuned. I mean, who knows with the rants again? I never can predict, what news is going to come out here usually. But stay tuned for more good stuff here this week. And right at the end here, thank you so much, Jordan, for the super chat. He says, Matt, Slate accepted our proposal for Matt Maran review for a vehicle via email. Oh, interesting. Well, I haven't heard from them yet. I will keep an eye out though. Thank you so much for reaching out to them for me. And yeah, we'll see. I think, they have now said that they are going to be hopefully getting the Slate trucks on the streets by the end of 2026. So if that does in fact turn out to be the case, then I'm hoping they do a media drive, and I will absolutely, be going on it if I get invited here this year, because I'm very excited for the Slate. It's one of the few vehicles I don't really have that much I'm excited about this year. That's one of them, because you guys know I've been harping for years about a bare bones car being a high potential kind of idea in my opinion, especially these days, and I'm very excited for the Slate. So hopefully we can make that happen at some point and I can get into a Slate this year. So but thank you so much for your help with that, Jordan, and I'll keep an eye out for sure. And all right, but yeah, I hope you guys have a great week, and I'll see you guys on Wednesday for the midweek live. And yeah, thanks so much, and be safe, stay healthy, and have fun, and try and have a good week here. We'll keep our fingers crossed. Yeah, but anyway, take care.